NZNT, Chapter 39. Looking at Shukaku, who was on guard and filled with fear, Yusuke's eyes flashed with a glint of determination. As he drew his sword, a crimson whirlwind of flames instantly engulfed Shukaku's entire body. Ryujinjaka, torch, Shukaku, enveloped in the fiery whirlwind, let out a heart-wrenching howl, struggling desperately. But no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't extinguish or escape the raging flames. This sword technique, torch, could unleash a fiery whirlwind that enveloped the enemy in an instant when the sword was drawn. It wouldn't dissipate until the enemy was completely turned to ashes. It was perfect for dealing with enemies like tailed beasts, who were large in size and had incredible vitality and recovery abilities. After a while, Shukaku realized that he couldn't escape the flames. He completely gave up struggling and started to swing his two giant claws, attacking Yusuke. Facing Shukaku, who had gone mad, Yusuke no longer needed to attack. He just kept dodging. As the flames burned longer and longer, Shukaku became weaker and weaker, and his attack frequency decreased. With a loud bang, Shukaku's massive body finally collapsed onto the sand. With his vitality and chakra almost completely depleted, Shukaku was now on the verge of death. After absorbing the flames that were still burning on Shukaku's body with Ryujinjaka, Yusuke took out the scroll for sealing and prepared to begin the four symbols seal ritual. Yusuke-kun, I wonder if you would mind giving me Shukaku. Suddenly, a hoarse, low voice rang out in Yusuke's ear. At the same time, a pale figure with a pair of snake eyes appeared behind Yusuke. It was none other than Orochimaru, who had defected from Konoha. Before Orochimaru finished speaking, 8 ferocious venomous snakes suddenly slithered out from behind his body and lunged viciously at Yusuke, who was facing away from him. Hearing this familiar voice, Yusuke was startled. At this moment, he had already sheathed Ryujinjaka. It was too late to either counterattack or dodge. He felt a sharp pain in his limbs and shoulders. 8 venomous snakes had bitten him tightly. But just as Orochimaru thought he had controlled Yusuke, a large amount of flames suddenly erupted from the wounds where Yusuke had been bitten. Not only did it completely vaporize the snakes' venom, but it also spread rapidly along the snakes, towards Orochimaru's body. Seeing this, Orochimaru immediately cut off the venomous snakes that had slithered out from behind him to prevent himself from being burned. Yusuke seized this opportunity to quickly break free. After creating some distance between himself and Orochimaru, Yusuke turned around and stood still. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Orochimaru with a gaze full of killing intent. Although Yusuke appeared calm on the surface, he was already secretly thinking of a counter-strategy. Yusuke knew very well that he didn't have enough chakra to continue fighting a Kage-level expert, especially Orochimaru, who was very good at playing it safe and being cunning. Although his Ryujinjaka had great destructive power, it also consumed a lot of chakra. If he were at his peak, he wouldn't be afraid of Orochimaru. But in this situation, if Orochimaru used a war of attrition to fight him, he would have no choice but to run away. But that would be a pity. He had just worked so hard to subdue Shukaku. It would be a shame to let Orochimaru get away with it. Orochimaru-sama, we're old friends. It seems a bit unsportsmanlike of you to attack like that, Yusuke said calmly, adjusting his clothes, which had been torn by Orochimaru's venomous snakes. At this time, the wounds where Yusuke had been bitten by the venomous snakes were no longer a problem. Yusuke could completely control the flames to sterilize the wounds with high temperatures and coagulate the blood. Of course, Yusuke could only use this treatment method on himself. Seeing that Yusuke was very calm and he couldn't see through his true strength, Orochimaru couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This guy really wasn't easy to deal with. Sticking out his snake-like tongue and licking his lips, Orochimaru laughed, there's no way. I'm not like you. I can't cast the 4 red yang formation by myself. Although defeating Shukaku wasn't difficult, I wasn't sure I could catch him. So, I had to ask you to help. Also, Yusuke-kun, now that I've left the village, you don't have to call me Sama anymore. Orochimaru was currently cultivating his own team, such as Kimimaro, Jugo, and the Foreman Squad. Although these people were all talented, they were still young at this stage and couldn't help Orochimaru. Otherwise, Orochimaru would only need to have the Foreman Squad cast a barrier jutsu to trap Shukaku, and he could capture Shukaku himself. Yusuke looked at Orochimaru and said slowly, Mizuki is your man, right? He's the one who told you I was coming to Sunagakur. Orochimaru showed a surprised expression. Then, he praised, as expected of Yusuke-kun. You can actually discover this. You really have a keen sense of smell. Orochimaru, of course, didn't know that this wasn't Yusuke discovering Mizuki's flaws. It was just that Yusuke, as a time traveler, already knew Mizuki's background. So, you guessed that I, with the four symbols seal, wouldn't let Shukaku in the Nara Desert go. Therefore, you've been secretly following me, waiting to reap the benefits after I dealt with Shukaku, Yusuke said. Orochimaru chuckled ominously, yes. But Yusuke-kun, you already have the nine-tailed fox. Why don't you give this Shukaku to me? Yusuke laughed, this is a tailed beast. You're not going to take it from me with just those 2 sentences, are you? Looking at Yusuke, who still seemed to have confidence, Orochimaru probed, do you still have the strength to fight me now? I've been hiding beneath the sand. I've been watching your entire fight with Shukaku. Your chakra should be almost depleted now, right? No wonder Yusuke felt something was different about Orochimaru. He felt like Orochimaru's skin was a little redder than before. It turned out that he had been hiding under the sand, and it had been baked by the high temperature. This entire area of sand was covered by his flame release, 10 directions scorching earth. The temperature beneath the sand was unbearable even for Shukaku. But Orochimaru had obviously used some kind of jutsu to protect his body. Otherwise, a normal person would have been roasted by this temperature. If it were anyone else, they might not have the strength left. But I'm an Uchiha. As soon as the words left his mouth, 3 golden red flame tomo appeared in each of Yusuke's pupils. With his Sharingan activated, Yusuke calmly stared at Orochimaru. Seeing the change in Yusuke's eyes, Orochimaru's pupils also contracted sharply in shock. He had long suspected that Yusuke had awakened the Sharingan, but he never expected it to be a Sharingan he had never seen before. Although he didn't know what kind of abilities Yusuke's Flame Tomo Sharingan had, it instinctively made him feel very dangerous. Yusuke-kun, do you know? You're like a cornered prey now. You're trying to scare off the hunter by bluffing, Orochimaru laughed. At this time, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. His aura was also pressing down on Yusuke, as if he could attack at any moment. Faced with Orochimaru's almost intimidating probe, Yusuke remained calm. Yes, this is indeed a bluff. After all, this pair of Sharingan is my last trump card. I don't want to use it lightly unless I absolutely have to. Hearing Yusuke's words, Orochimaru fell silent. After a moment, Orochimaru finally gave up on continuing to attack. Instead, he compromised, you should know that I have many valuable jutsu, tools, and information. Give me this Shukaku. You can ask for whatever you want. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Yusuke frowned and thought carefully, it seems like Orochimaru is determined to get this Shukaku. Since I'm currently weak, it's better to owe him a favor. I can also get some tangible benefits. Besides, Orochimaru does have a lot of things I'm interested in. Deciding not to fight Orochimaru for this Shukaku, Yusuke sighed and complained, you know, I've gone through a lot of trouble to prepare for this Shukaku. I've suffered a lot in the battle just now. I almost fell into Shukaku's hands. And I was just ambushed by you, Orochimaru. I'm very seriously injured. Looking at Yusuke, who was full of energy and talking incessantly, Orochimaru interrupted coldly, Yusuke-kun, just say what you want. First, I need 10, no, 20 Hashirama Cell Fusion Liquids. Hashirama Cell Fusion Liquid was an auxiliary potion that Yusuke and Orochimaru had developed together when they were developing the Four Symbols Seal. Besides being used to cast the Four Symbols Seal, it also had many other uses. Although Yusuke also knew how to make it, he lacked the materials. He could ask Orochimaru for some to keep in reserve. No problem, Orochimaru nodded. Although Hashirama Cell Fusion Liquid was precious, Orochimaru could make it himself, so it wasn't a big deal for him. Second, I need to know the exact location of Danzo's Root Organization laboratory. For Yusuke, Danzo and the Root Organization were a target he would eventually have to eliminate. They had an irreconcilable conflict with the Uchiha clan. And Danzo's laboratory did have many valuable resources. This was something Yusuke hoped to obtain. Hearing Yusuke's second request, Orochimaru frowned. But after thinking for a moment, he agreed. Even though Orochimaru had defected, he was still in contact with Danzo and was a partner in Danzo's human experimentation. Therefore, he knew the location of the root organization's laboratory very well. Third, I need the exact location and method of entering Raichi Cave. Okay. Fourth, Yusuke-kun, don't be too greedy, Orochimaru said with an unpleasant expression when he heard Yusuke's fourth request. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 3 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 40. Seeing Orochimaru call him greedy, Yusuke shook his head and said slowly, this is a tailed beast. Just a little Hashirama cell fusion liquid and 2 measly pieces of information. The value isn't even close to being equal. While he said this, Yusuke knew that the Hashirama cell fusion liquid and 2 pieces of information he requested were already incredibly valuable. But this was a trade after all, and he had to fight for the benefits he deserved. Orochimaru snorted coldly, go ahead, but I don't want to hear the word, fifth, today. Yusuke knew that too much of a good thing was bad. He smiled and said, don't worry. This is the last request. My younger sister, Izumi, has recently started training in swordsmanship, but she doesn't have a suitable weapon. I hope I can get a Kusanagi sword from you. In the Naruto world, Kusanagi isn't a single sword. It's a general term for a type of sword. Yusuke knew that Orochimaru had more than one Kusanagi sword. How many he had and the origin of those Kusanagi swords in Orochimaru's possession were always a mystery. In the original story, Orochimaru had taken out several Kusanagi swords. For example, the Kusanagi sword he used to fight the third Hokage during the Chunin exams was seized by Enma and left in Konoha, not taken away. When he fought against Naruto with the 9-tailed fox on Tenchi Bridge, he used a Kusanagi sword that could extend. Later, Orochimaru kidnapped Sasuke and gave him one. This showed that he definitely had a lot of them. Besides Orochimaru, Itachi's Susanoo also used the Totsuka blade, which was also a Kusanagi sword. It was said to be the strongest of all the Kusanagi swords, known as the sealing sword. Hearing Yusuke's words, Orochimaru opened his mouth, and a wet sword hilt slowly emerged. Seeing this, Yusuke quickly stopped him. He didn't want to give his sister a sword that was covered in Orochimaru's saliva. Wait, can you switch to another one? Hearing this, Orochimaru's face darkened. He swallowed the sword back into his belly and then spat out a scroll. The scroll landed on the sand at Yusuke's feet and unfurled. On the scroll was a sealing formula for storing items. In the center of the sealing formula was a flowing, cursive character for sword. Release. Orochimaru formed a hand seal. A delicate katana slowly emerged from the sealing formula on the scroll. The blade of this katana was hidden in the scabbard. The scabbard and hilt were white. 2 pink ribbons embroidered with cherry blossoms fluttered in the wind at the end of the hilt. Yusuke picked up the katana and drew it from the scabbard. In an instant, a dazzling blade of light, like cherry blossoms, bloomed under the moonlight, beautiful and breathtaking. What a beautiful sword! Admiring the beautiful cherry blossom pattern on the blade, Yusuke exclaimed in admiration. Then, he asked Orochimaru, what is the name of this sword? Orochimaru said slowly, Senbon Sakura. Sheathing the katana, Yusuke said with satisfaction, Izumi will love this sword. Thank you. Since the trade is over, Yusuke-kun, shouldn't you fulfill your promise and give me Shukaku? Orochimaru said. Orochimaru, who was as cautious as ever, wouldn't seal Shukaku in front of Yusuke. Instead, he planned to take Shukaku away first and then deal with it slowly. Yusuke nodded. He formed a hand seal with his right hand, and the 4 fire release clones that maintained the 4 purple flame formation all vanished into a flash of fire, and the 4 purple flame formation instantly disappeared. At the same time, a white python, nearly 120 meters long, slithered out from behind Orochimaru. The python wrapped itself around the dying Shukaku, tightly controlling him. Yusuke could tell that this white python had strong sealing power. Shukaku, entangled by this python, could no longer escape. Then, Yusuke-kun, until we meet again. Orochimaru, having obtained Shukaku, didn't linger any longer. After saying goodbye to Yusuke, his body slowly sank into the sand. Shukaku, entangled by the white python, sank into the sand with him. Looking at Orochimaru, who was gradually sinking into the sand, Yusuke said slowly, "Until we meet again, Orochimaru. Also, your current fashion sense really isn't good. You should consider changing your clothes." At this time, Orochimaru had changed into the kind of clothes that had a thick rope tied around his waist and a bow tied behind it. In Yusuke's view, this outfit was truly strange. Hearing Yusuke's words, Orochimaru's face, which had been slightly cheerful because he had captured Shukaku, instantly froze. He didn't recover until he completely sank into the sand. Yusuke put the Kusanagi sword, Senbon Sakura, into his storage scroll and immediately returned to the inn. Although he hadn't been able to obtain Shukaku's yin release chakra this time, he still had a good harvest. He had obtained many useful items and information from Orochimaru. But Orochimaru's performance had also given Yusuke a great deal of worry. Orochimaru was already much stronger than he was in the original story. Coupled with the 4 symbol seals, and the power he had gained after sealing Shukaku, he was even more formidable. If they ever faced each other again, it would be a huge headache for Yusuke. 2 days after Yusuke's trade with Orochimaru, the second stage of the Chunin exams ended. The passing rate was similar to that of previous exams. Only about 30% of the genin teams passed the second stage. And among the eliminated teams, some genin had died directly in the demon desert. It had to be said that the world of ninjas was truly cruel. Only 9 teams remained that hadn't been eliminated. Both of Konoha's participating teams had successfully passed the second stage of the exam. The examiners announced that the genin would have a day of rest before the third stage of the Chunin exams. The third stage was also the final stage of the Chunin exams. It focused on testing the genin's individual combat abilities. The examiners would use electronic devices to randomly select genin participating in the exam and have them fight each other in pairs. The winner of each round would advance to the next round, and the loser would be eliminated. The Chunin exams would officially end when the final winner was decided. Sunagaku's exam team would then use the results of the 3 rounds to come up with promotion recommendations for all the genin who participated in the exam. They would then formally submit these recommendations to the ninja villages that the genin belonged to. The reason they only provided recommendations was that whether or not a genin from each village was promoted to Chunin wasn't decided by the exam organizers. It was ultimately decided by each ninja village. After all, the joint Chunin exams were more about politics than practicality. It wasn't just for selecting Chunin. In the inn where the Konoha delegation was staying, Izumi was enduring the pain of her heaven-cursed seal erupting in her shoulder. Looking at Izumi, who was sweating profusely, everyone was very worried about her condition, but they also admired her perseverance. Not long after the second stage of the exam began, Izumi's heaven-cursed seal erupted. Although everyone couldn't experience Izumi's feelings, seeing her appearance, they knew that the pain must have been unbearable for a normal person. During this time, Itachi and Kurenai Yuhi had repeatedly suggested that they abandon the exam and first find a way to deal with Izumi's cursed seal, but Izumi refused. Under these circumstances, Izumi had endured for 3 days. Even Itachi was somewhat in awe of this carefree senior. Is this the cursed seal that Orochimaru left behind? To be honest, I really don't have a way to solve it, Hazuki frowned, looking at the red glow around Izumi's shoulder. Although she was very reluctant, Izumi still forced a smile and said, "It's okay. Even if I withdraw now, it won't affect Itachi and Hanachin's participation in the third round of the exam." Yusuke gently patted her head and smiled, "Don't worry. I want you to shine in the third round of the exam. After all, it's my fault. If I had noticed your cursed seal from the beginning, you wouldn't have had to endure these 3 days." Hearing Yusuke's words, the genin all looked at Yusuke. There was surprise, anticipation, and even more admiration. From Yusuke's words, they could tell that he had a way to deal with this cursed seal. In the eyes of the genin, Yusuke, a senior who wasn't much older than them, was already incredibly strong. They never expected that he was also proficient in sealing jutsu and could solve a cursed seal that even the veteran elite Jonin, Hazuki, was helpless against. "Yusuke, are you really sure? This is a cursed seal that Orochimaru placed." "It's probably not that simple," Hazuki asked Yusuke. He was very confident in Yusuke's strength, but if he said that he could even deal with a cursed seal placed by one of the Sannin, Orochimaru, he was still skeptical. Yusuke nodded. "It's no problem to temporarily suppress it, but I'll have to think of a way to solve it completely." Actually, Yusuke already had a way to remove the cursed seal of heaven from Izumi's body, but doing so would expose many of his abilities. Therefore, he had to wait for the right opportunity to help Izumi completely solve this problem. Having said that, Yusuke didn't waste any more time. He began to seal it immediately. Izumi was already in a lot of pain. Every second she delayed was torture for her. After setting up the sealing formation, Yusuke began to form hand seals. The hand seals that Yusuke formed with both hands were very complex. They were the same seals that Kakashi had used to help Sasuke seal the cursed seal of heaven in the original story. Evil sealing method. After completing the hand seals, several inscription seals emitting powerful chakra appeared on Yusuke's right fingertips. As Yusuke pressed his finger, which was bearing the inscription seals, on the cursed seal of heaven on Izumi's shoulder, a circle of sealing formulas slowly appeared around the cursed seal of heaven. The dark red glow on the cursed seal of heaven gradually faded until it completely disappeared. The cursed seal of heaven turned black again. Because Yusuke's mastery of sealing jutsu far surpassed Kakashi's, the process of casting the evil sealing method was much simpler than Kakashi's, but the effect was even better. It worked. Kurenai Yuhi, who was standing beside them, saw that the cursed seal had clearly subsided. She hugged Izumi happily. She had become very good friends with Izumi over these past few days. Seeing that Izumi's cursed seal problem was solved, she was relieved. Besides Kurenai Yuhi, everyone else present also showed joyful expressions. Thank you. Izumi looked at Yusuke with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. Yusuke waved his hand and smiled, "You're my subordinate now. You have to perform well in tomorrow's exam." Yes. Izumi nodded seriously, determined to show Yusuke her true strength. The next day, at the site of the third stage of the Chunin exams, the stands were packed with people. Not only were most of Sunagaku's high-ranking officials, including the fourth Kage, Rasa, present, but many officials from the Land of Wind had also come to watch. As Konoha's representatives, Yusuke and Hazuki sat in the guest seats not far from the fourth Kage, enjoying a good view of the competition. After the presiding examiner announced a series of rules, the electronic screen above the square began to automatically select the genin for the first match. Everyone focused on the constantly flashing avatars on the screen, guessing who the randomly selected opponents would be. The first match, Uchiha Izumi of Konoha Village vs Uchiha Itachi of Konoha Village, the examiner announced, looking at the information of the two genin who would be fighting on the screen. Izumi, who was full of energy and ready to shine after her cursed seal problem was solved, was taken aback. Then, she couldn't help but curse. What the hell? For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 4 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 41. Seeing that her first opponent was actually Itachi, Izumi was extremely depressed. Her expression instantly changed from eager anticipation to utter despair. She had originally wanted to perform well in the third stage of the exam and show Yusuke her excellent side, but now she had completely lost her chance. As expected, not long after they engaged in battle, Izumi was defeated by Itachi. This made Izumi, who wanted to show off her skills, very frustrated. It was only because Itachi had given Izumi, his senior, some face and pretended to delay the fight that it didn't end faster. Seeing Izumi, who was dejectedly leaving the competition, Yusuke could only sigh inwardly at her bad luck. In this Chunin exam, besides Konoha, Yusuke hadn't found anyone particularly outstanding. Although Itachi was young, he was already the strongest among them. Yusuke didn't think there was any foul play involved in Itachi and Izumi facing each other in the first round. Sunagaku, one of the 5 great ninja villages, wouldn't stoop to using such tactics in a Chunin exam. Besides, the results of the Chunin exams weren't solely based on victory or defeat to determine whether a genin was suitable for promotion to Chunin. It was necessary to consider their overall performance. For example, Shikamaru in the Konoha Chunin exams in the original story, although he lost to Tamari in the duel, was the only one of the Konoha 11 who was promoted to Chunin. In the subsequent matches, Konoha's genin all performed exceptionally well. Itachi, who was only 7 years old, was the focus of everyone's attention throughout the entire exam. Itachi's battle IQ was extremely high. He could always easily find his opponent's weaknesses during a fight. He was also very skilled in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. He could deliver effective blows to his opponents in a very targeted way. He defeated his opponents with minimal effort, which also greatly compensated for his lack of chakra. The fourth cage looked at Itachi, who had defeated his last opponent and won the final victory, with deep eyes. He subconsciously turned his head to look at the young Yusuke, who was not far away. He couldn't help but sigh. As expected of Konoha village. It's truly full of talented people. As one of the 5 great ninja villages, our Sunagaku is far inferior to Konoha. Rasa's gaze was immediately noticed by Yusuke, who had powerful spiritual power. Yusuke turned to look and met Rasa's gaze. Out of politeness, the two nodded slightly to each other as a greeting. But Yusuke could see a look of wariness and worry in Rasa's eyes. He was clearly intimidated by the performance of Konoha's genin. Perhaps it's time to make a decision, Rasa thought to himself, remembering the one-tailed Jinchuriki plan that Elder Chiyo had proposed. In Chiyo's plan, the candidate for the one-tailed Jinchuriki was Rasa's son, who had just been born prematurely. Rasa had always been reluctant to make this decision, but Konoha's outstanding performance in this Chunin exam had given him a great sense of crisis. Although the Land of Fire was an ally of the Land of Wind, there were no eternal friends in politics, only eternal interests. When Sunagaku's power was no longer enough to stand on equal footing with Konoha, the Land of Wind would only become a vassal of the Land of Fire. In Rasa's view, the daimyo of the Land of Wind was truly short-sighted. He had been reducing Sunagaku's funding year after year. It was simply digging his own grave. If he hadn't been able to use magnet release to obtain sand gold and sell it to supplement the village's funds, Sunagaku would only have to continue shrinking until it eventually became a secondate ninja village. Gaara, forgive me. This is the fate of being a ninja. Rasa, who was troubled by Sunagaku's internal and external problems, made up his mind at this moment to sacrifice his own son, Gaara, and carry out the one-tailed Jinchuriki plan. On the other side, Hazuki was also amazed by Itachi's performance. He thought that with the talent Itachi had displayed, he would soon become an outstanding ninja who wouldn't be inferior to Yusuke. He was also very envious that Yusuke had a disciple like Itachi. After the Chunin exams ended, Konoha's delegation didn't linger in Sunagaku. Yusuke and Hazuki directly took the 6 genin back to Konoha village and handed the sealed letter containing Sunagaku's evaluation and promotion recommendations for Konoha's 6 genin to the 3rd Hokage. Combining Sunagaku's promotion recommendations, the 3rd Hokage ultimately decided to promote all 6 genin to Chunin. Among the 6 genin, Izumi hadn't had many opportunities to perform. Sunagaku's promotion recommendations didn't give her a very high evaluation. But based on the recommendations of the guiding Jonin, Yusuke and Hazuki, who believed that Izumi's strength, endurance, and her ability to not hold back her teammates in missions all met the requirements of a Chunin, the 3rd Hokage also agreed to her promotion to Chunin. The 6 genin were very happy to learn that they had all been successfully promoted. They made plans to celebrate together that night. Participating in the Sunagaku Chunin exams together had also forged a good friendship between them. Izumi and Kurenai Yuhi, in particular, had become best friends who talked about everything. After leaving the Hokage Tower, Yusuke returned home and found that Izumi and Kabuto weren't there. He learned from his mother, Uchiha Izumi, that they were training at the training ground. Knowing that they hadn't slacked off in their training while he was away, Yusuke was very satisfied. He arrived at the training ground that he and his disciples used exclusively. From afar, Yusuke saw Izumi and Kabuto sparring. Because Izumi had been diligently practicing Uchiha-style swordsmanship, she was now better than Kabuto at taijutsu. But Kabuto had an overwhelming advantage in ninjutsu. His endless stream of jutsu kept Izumi on the defensive. In the end, Kabuto was still the better of the two. He used an earth release jutsu to trap Izumi, who was running out of stamina. Not bad. It seems like you haven't been slacking off. Yusuke walked over, rescuing Izumi from Kabuto's earth release jutsu. Brother. Sensei. Izumi and Kabuto showed happy expressions when they saw Yusuke. Yusuke took out the Kusanagi sword, Senbon Sakura, from his storage scroll. The delicate-looking katana immediately caught their attention. Izumi, who was now passionate about swordsmanship, was particularly fascinated. Handing the katana to Izumi, Yusuke smiled. Izumi, this is a gift for you. I believe you won't let this sword down. Izumi solemnly took the katana and immediately examined it carefully. The Senbon Sakura was originally designed for female swordswomen, and Izumi couldn't put it down. Holding Senbon Sakura, Izumi was both happy and touched. Although she was young, she could tell that this sword was incredibly valuable. It must have been something her brother had carefully prepared for her. At this time, Yusuke already had a plan for his 3 disciples' futures. In Yusuke's view, as long as Itachi continued to grow steadily, he would become a Kage level or even stronger than Kage level expert. And Yusuke's expectations for him were even higher. Kabuto's overall talent was somewhat inferior to Itachi's, but he was a ninja with the potential to learn senjutsu. During this trip to Sunagaku, Yusuke had obtained information about Raichi Cave from Orochimaru. In the original story, Kabuto successfully learned the Raichi Cave senjutsu, which even Orochimaru hadn't learned. His use of senjutsu was absolutely the best in Naruto. In Yusuke's view, Kabuto with senjutsu and Kabuto without senjutsu were 2 completely different concepts. But Raichi Cave was very deep, and learning senjutsu also carried a great risk. Yusuke would only carry out this plan when he was confident in his ability to control these risks. As for his sister and disciple, Izumi, although her talent was inferior to the first 2, she was still very good. She had shown great talent in swordsmanship, and coupled with the Sharingan's powerful dynamic eyesight, she would definitely be a top swordswoman in the ninja world. When the time was right, Yusuke planned to give all 3 of his disciples cursed seals to make up for their congenital shortcomings. Of course, these shortcomings were only in comparison to the overpowered characters in Naruto. Currently, Yusuke had only developed the 4-symbol seal, which could seal yin-release chakra. He had also decided that he would have to develop the reverse 4-symbol seal, which could seal yang-release chakra, in the future. He already had a few choices in mind for the materials to make up the reverse 4-symbol seal. Itachi was proficient in genjutsu, and Yusuke planned to use the 4-symbol seal on him, using yin-release chakra to strengthen his mental power. As for Kabuto and Izumi, Yusuke planned to use the reverse 4-symbol seal on them, using yang-release chakra to strengthen their vitality. With these kids' talent, I believe it won't be long before they can truly become my help, Yusuke hoped. Not long after the Sunagaku Chunin exams ended, Tsunade, who was traveling, received news that the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, was seriously injured and unconscious. She temporarily returned to the village. Although Tsunade's personality was a bit willful, she always did as she pleased. But she still cared about Minato, her junior. Therefore, even though she didn't want to return to the village, she still came back to see if she could help Minato recover. Konoha Hospital, Minato's ward. The 3rd Hokage, Tsunade, and Kakashi were standing in front of Minato's bed, discussing his injuries. I didn't expect Minato's previous injuries to be so severe. If it were a normal person, they would have died. Tsunade examined Minato's condition and said with a serious expression. Then, do you have a way to wake up Sensei? Kakashi asked anxiously. Tsunade nodded, there is a way, but... At this point, Tsunade shook her head helplessly, it's a long process. I don't know how long it will take, and I can't stay in Konoha that long. Although Minato's physical injuries were very serious, they've actually completely healed after so long. But because he suffered injuries that far exceeded what his body could bear, his mind, or his brain's judgment of his body, is in a state of death. That's why he hasn't woken up yet. What we need to do now is to use gentle medical chakra to stimulate Minato's brain for a long time, activate his brain's activity, and allow him to regain consciousness. Hearing Tsunade's words, the 3rd Hokage and Kakashi present both understood the meaning behind her words. Stimulating the brain with medical chakra requires a very high level of chakra control for a medical ninja. If you're not careful, it could have extremely serious consequences. Therefore, only Tsunade herself was currently capable of performing this treatment. And it was very clear that Tsunade didn't want to stay in Konoha village for too long. She had already made a big concession by coming back to check on Minato's injuries. Tsunade, both Minato and Konoha need you. The 3rd Hokage frowned and tried to persuade Tsunade to stay in Konoha. But before he finished speaking, he was decisively rejected by Tsunade. Sarutobi-sensei, I'm sorry, I don't have any plans to stay in the village right now. Even if you force me to stay, I won't have the heart to perform this treatment for Minato day after day. If I make a mistake during the process, it could be irreversible damage to Minato." Tsunade waved her hand. "Is there really no chance for anyone else to perform this treatment for sensei besides you?" Kakashi asked unwillingly. Hearing this, Tsunade thought for a moment and said slowly, "Now that you mention it, there might be a chance." For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 3 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 42. Not long after Tsunade returned to Konoha village, rumors spread throughout the village that Tsunade, one of the Sannin, was looking for a disciple. However, to become Tsunade's disciple, one had to pass 3 trials. For a month after the news spread, many ninjas in Konoha village went to try their luck at the trials, but no one was able to meet the requirements. The news of Tsunade selecting a disciple spread throughout the village. Yusuke, who was in Konoha, naturally heard about it. In Yusuke's view, Tsunade's search for a disciple was most likely related to the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze's, injuries. After all, Tsunade had returned to the village to check on the 4th Hokage's condition. Yusuke learned some of the content of the trials that Tsunade had set up from the ninjas who had failed the trials. He could tell that Tsunade was looking for someone with exceptional chakra control talent. Upon learning this information, Yusuke's lips curled up slightly. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hokage Tower, the 3rd Hokage's office. What's the situation? Haven't you found a suitable candidate yet? The 3rd Hokage frowned and asked Kakashi, who was standing beside him. Kakashi shook his head. The trials that Tsunade set up are indeed very difficult. I tried it myself, but I couldn't reach the level of chakra control that Tsunade requires. The 3rd Hokage was silent for a while. Then, he turned to Tsunade and asked, "Can we lower the standards a little?" "Impossible. You have to understand that the process of treating Minato can't afford any mistakes. If they don't meet my requirements, it will only end up killing Minato," Tsunade said firmly. "To be honest, I didn't have high hopes from the start. Shizune is the child I've found with the most medical ninja talent in recent years, but she's still far from meeting the requirements to perform this jutsu. I didn't expect you to find a suitable candidate in such a short period of time." Kakashi, who cared about his teacher, took 2 steps forward. He knelt down in front of Tsunade, bowing his body all the way to the ground, and begged, "Tsunade-sama, only you can save sensei now. If there's no suitable candidate, please stay in Konoha and treat sensei." For Kakashi, he had lost too many family members and friends. He couldn't bear to watch his teacher lying in bed like a vegetable. Tsunade sighed, but she had always done as she pleased. She wouldn't give up on her own ideas just because of Kakashi's plea. "I'm sorry, but I can't grant your request. Since there's no suitable candidate, I'm going to leave the village today. I've left the assessment methods with you. If you find someone who can pass the trials, you can contact me anytime. I will teach him the treatment method." Just as Kakashi was feeling despair, a ninja in charge of delivering messages knocked on the door. "3rd Hokage-sama, good news." "Come in," the 3rd Hokage instructed. The ninja who was delivering the message pushed the door open. Behind him was a boy of 8 or 9 years old with white hair and delicate features. This boy was none other than Yusuke's disciple, Kabuto. "3rd Hokage-sama, this boy just completed all the trials that Tsunade required. I immediately brought him to see you and Tsunade," the ninja delivering the message said. Hearing that someone had actually completed the trials she had set up, and that he was a young boy, Tsunade was surprised. At the same time, she became interested in this boy. After all, if he was truly gifted, then it would be a good thing for her to take on such a disciple. Tsunade immediately called Kabuto to her side and personally tested him. She discovered that Kabuto did have chakra control abilities that far surpassed normal people. Even she was somewhat inferior. This discovery made Tsunade very happy. She was about to ask Kabuto if he was willing to become her disciple when Kakashi's words, which were spoken from the side, were like a bucket of cold water on her. "Kabuto, aren't you Yusuke's disciple?" Kakashi, who had already gotten up, asked in confusion. Hearing that someone met Tsunade's requirements, Kakashi was overjoyed at first. But when he saw that it was Kabuto, he was very surprised. Yes, sensei asked me to try Tsunadesima's trials. He said he wanted to test my chakra control abilities, Kabuto replied. When he had first entered the office and seen the third Hokage and the legendary Sannin, Tsunade, he was a little nervous. But he quickly adjusted his emotions, becoming neither humble nor arrogant. Is this beautiful elder sister the legendary Sannin? I didn't expect her to be so young. Kabuto thought to himself, looking at Tsunade, who looked like a girl. He was obviously charmed by Tsunade's appearance. Actually, Tsunade was already in her 40s, but because of the Byakugo seal's ability to preserve her appearance and regulate her body's functions, she still had the appearance of a girl. Hearing Kabuto's answer, Tsunade frowned. So, you're already someone else's disciple? Yes, my teacher is Uchiha Yusuke, Kabuto nodded. Hearing the three words, Uchiha, Tsunade subconsciously frowned. As a member of the Senju clan, she didn't have any good feelings towards the Uchiha clan. But she didn't have the strong animosity towards the Uchiha clan that her great-uncle, Senju Tobirama, or Danzo had. Uchiha Yusuke, that name sounds familiar, Tsunade muttered. Uchiha Yusuke is a jonin in the village. His nickname is Flame Sword. He's also known as the strongest Uchiha. Now, he's a very powerful ninja, Kakashi explained. Tsunade nodded, so it's him. Then I'll go see him myself. Tsunade had already decided to take Kabuto as her disciple. Knowing that Kabuto was Yusuke's disciple, Tsunade decided to talk to Yusuke and see if she could get him to give up his disciple. Tsunadesima, if Kabuto can't be your disciple. Before Kakashi finished speaking, Tsunade understood what he meant and interrupted, don't worry about that. No matter what, I can teach him how to treat Minato. Hearing this, Kakashi and the third Hokage were relieved. Tsunade was also the type who acted decisively. She immediately took Kabuto to the Uchiha clan's headquarters to find Yusuke. Kakashi and Tsunade's disciple, Shizune, who was a little worried, followed them. The Uchiha clan's headquarters. Yusuke was teaching Itachi ninjutsu, while Izumi watched from the side. Ninjutsu. Fire illusion crow technique. Itachi quickly formed hand seals, and his body transformed into a crow clone that possessed both fire and genjutsu attributes. Seeing that Itachi had mastered his signature jutsu so quickly, Yusuke nodded in satisfaction. This jutsu was based on Itachi's crow clone technique, so it was naturally easy for Itachi to learn. Izumi also thought this jutsu was very cool, but unfortunately, she didn't have any talent in genjutsu. After trying many times, she still couldn't grasp the key. Just then, they saw Tsunade and the others walking from afar. They stopped their ninja training. You're Uchiha Yusuke? Tsunade asked, looking at the boy who was only 15 or 16 years old. On the way here, she had also heard Kakashi talk about Yusuke's exploits. Especially when she learned about the process of Yusuke's battle with Shisui, she was very surprised. The information revealed by Kakashi showed that this Uchiha genius ninja, whom she had heard of before, was already an expert who was no less skilled than her. Tsunade trusted Kakashi's judgment very much and wouldn't think that he would exaggerate Yusuke's strength. As Tsunade was observing Yusuke, Yusuke was also observing Tsunade. Although this wasn't the first time he had seen Tsunade, they had never interacted before. Tsunade was truly the most vividly portrayed female character in the original Naruto. She was beautiful, powerful, and had a distinct personality. You could say that she wasn't perfect, but you couldn't say that she wasn't charming. At this time, Tsunade was wearing a woman's short kimono. Her long yellow hair was braided into 2 braids behind her back. Her features were exquisite, and she had a blue rhombus mark between her eyebrows. A necklace left by the first Hokage hung around her slender neck. For Yusuke, his first impression of Tsunade was that she was imposing. Yes, as the princess of the Senju clan, Tsunade didn't have any of the fussiness of a woman. Instead, she had a presence that was no less than that of a man. This presence not only didn't diminish her charm, but it also gave her an indescribable heroic aura. So it's Tsunadesima. I wonder what brings you to the Uchiha clan, Yusuke smiled. Although he was asking Tsunade, Yusuke knew what she was here for. This was the purpose of his plan to have Kabuto take Tsunade's trials. Kabuto is a very outstanding child. I intend to take him as my disciple. Tsunade looked directly at Yusuke and said bluntly. That was her personality. She spoke directly and never beat around the bush. Hearing Tsunade's words, Yusuke chuckled inwardly. But he showed a troubled expression on his face. I also value Kabuto very much. To be honest, Tsunade-sama, Kabuto has extraordinary talent in ninjutsu. He's also a valuable assistant to me in developing jutsu. Tsunade frowned. There are many ninja geniuses, but I haven't found anyone who can inherit my medical ninjutsu. I don't like to force people, but I really can't bear to give up a talent like Kabuto. If you let Kabuto become my disciple, you can ask for whatever you want. As soon as Tsunade finished speaking, Kabuto looked at Yusuke with great worry. If he had a choice, he wouldn't want to leave Yusuke and become someone else's disciple. Yusuke seemed very troubled. He thought for a moment and finally, as if he had made up his mind, said, I understand your concerns, Tsunade-sama. But from my perspective, I don't want to lose an outstanding disciple like Kabuto. Why don't we make a bet and leave the outcome to fate? If I lose, Kabuto will be your disciple, Tsunade-sama. But if Tsunade-sama loses, I have a small request that I hope Tsunade-sama will grant. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 2 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 43. Hearing Yusuke's proposal for a bet, Tsunade subconsciously prepared to agree. However, Shizune, who was beside her, quickly grabbed her arm. Yusuke nodded, yes, if I lose, Kabuto will naturally be your disciple, Tsunade-sama. If Tsunade-sama loses, I hope I can ask Tsunade-sama for a jutsu for Kabuto. Hearing this, Tsunade curiously asked, tell me what jutsu you want first. Yusuke smiled, summoning technique. The slug that Tsunade-sama summons has incredibly powerful healing abilities. Such a summoning beast is something all ninjas dream of. And Tsunade-sama doesn't have to worry about Kabuto passing the summoning technique on to others. After all, the summoning contract scroll should be in Tsunade-sama's possession. Kabuto will just sign his name on it. After Yusuke finished speaking, he quietly watched Tsunade, who was deep in thought, waiting for her reply. In Yusuke's plan, the summoning technique was actually secondary. What he really wanted was the senjutsu of the Shikatsu forest. You have to tell us what we're betting on first. Shizune, who was beside Tsunade, spoke up. She always felt that this young man, who wasn't much older than her, must have a hidden agenda. He was trying to trick Tsunade-sama. Yusuke laughed, why don't we bet on dice? No. As soon as Yusuke finished speaking, Shizune immediately rejected his proposal. She knew what Tsunade's luck was like. Betting on dice was a surefire way to lose. Seeing Shizune's reaction, Yusuke chuckled inwardly. He then proposed a few common gambling methods, but they were all rejected by Shizune. At this time, Tsunade's expression turned unpleasant. The veins on her fair forehead twitched slightly. This wasn't because she cared that Shizune was answering for her, but because she was very unhappy that Shizune didn't trust her powerful gambling skills. This won't work, and that won't work. This is a bit difficult. Why don't we just have a medical ninjutsu competition? After pretending to think about it in a troubled manner, Yusuke probed. Hearing Yusuke's words, Tsunade raised her eyebrows and said slowly, you should know that I'm best at medical ninjutsu. You're not joking by proposing this kind of competition, are you? Yusuke laughed. It seems like this miss isn't very satisfied with ordinary gambling methods. As it happens, I also have some knowledge of medical ninjutsu. And since we're all ninjas, why don't we settle this with ninjutsu? If Tsunade-sama has no objections, let's have a competition. Let's see who can restore a dying creature to life faster. How about it? Hearing Yusuke propose a medical ninjutsu competition, Shizune couldn't think of a reason to refuse. After all, this was Tsunade's forte. If she didn't even dare to bet on this, then there wouldn't be any other project that would be more advantageous to their side. Tsunade nodded, all right, if that's the case, then let's begin. But although you must have prepared, I, Tsunade, don't like to take advantage of others. No matter what the outcome, I owe you a favor. Tsunade also sensed that Yusuke seemed to be prepared. But in her view, she had a very high chance of winning in a medical ninjutsu competition. Even if she won, it would be an unfair victory. Therefore, this favor was compensation for Yusuke. Yusuke was slightly stunned. Then, he smiled, Thank you, Tsunadesima. After confirming the terms of the bet, they caught 2 catfish of similar size, both of which were dying, and placed them on 2 stone slabs. Yusuke and Tsunade stood in front of the 2 stone slabs, waiting for Kakashi, who was acting as the referee, to give the signal. Begin. As soon as Kakashi's voice fell, Tsunade and Yusuke immediately began to rescue the catfish in front of them. Tsunade saw several light blue chakra needles appear in her hand. She quickly inserted them into key locations on the catfish's body. The catfish immediately began to wriggle and jump. Seeing this, Kakashi asked Shizune, who was beside him, has Tsunadesima already won? Shizune shook her head, not yet. Tsunadesima is just using chakra stimulation therapy to first stimulate the catfish's vitality to prevent it from dying before she can treat it. To truly restore the fish's vitality, she still needs to continue treatment. As Shizune said, a light yellow chakra that felt very gentle appeared in Tsunade's hand. Tsunade covered the fish's body with her chakra-filled hand, and the fish's vitality was recovering at a visible rate. While Tsunade was performing medical ninjutsu, Yusuke took out a syringe and injected the liquid inside directly into the fish's body. After the injection was complete, Yusuke quickly formed hand seals. As soon as he finished the hand seals, he pressed his hand on the spot where he had injected the fish. Ninjutsu. Seal of Life. The liquid Yusuke had injected into the fish was Hashirama Cell Fusion liquid. The cursed seal technique he was performing was the Seal of Life that he had used to temporarily save the 4th Hokage and Kushina during the 9-tailed fox rampage. This powerful cursed seal technique could temporarily alleviate even the serious injuries that the 4th Hokage and Kushina had suffered at that time. It was even more effective against the injuries suffered by a mere fish. Although he was a little heartbroken to waste a tube of Hashirama Cell Fusion liquid, Yusuke felt it was worth it when he thought that he could let Kabuto learn Tsunade's slug summoning technique and further have the opportunity to learn the senjutsu of the Shikatsu forest. As soon as the cursed seal appeared on the fish's body instantly burst with powerful vitality. It wriggled and jumped wildly on the stone slab, even more active than a fish in water. The fish that Tsunade was treating was also about to fully recover, but it was still a step behind Yusuke. Looking at the fish constantly jumping on Yusuke's stone slab, Tsunade was surprised. I didn't expect you to be proficient in cursed seal techniques. But the key to your cursed seal is the tube of potion you injected into the fish. I can feel the incredibly powerful vitality contained within it. Yusuke laughed. I did take a shortcut. This potion is a life-saving potion I made myself. Combined with the Seal of Life, as long as the injured person still has a breath, they can be temporarily revived. Hearing Yusuke's explanation, Tsunade sighed and said slowly, I lost. Although you used a potion, there was no rule before the competition that prohibited its use. Looking at Shizune, whose mouth was puffed up in anger, Tsunade laughed, you little girl, why are you making that face? It's as if you lost. Shizune said unwillingly, he's too despicable. He used a potion. It wouldn't matter if I lost, but Tsunadesima, you're so good at medical ninjutsu. Tsunade smiled and patted Shizune's head to comfort her. Without hesitation, she took out a scroll from her bosom and unfurled it on the ground. This scroll was the summoning contract scroll of the Shikatsu forest slug. On the part of the scroll that was unfurled, Yusuke saw the names of Senju Hashirama and Tsunade. Tsunade beckoned to Kabuto, kid, come here. Kabuto didn't move. He looked at Yusuke, who nodded with a smile, signaling him to do as Tsunade said. Write your name here and then press your thumbprint on the space below your name with your blood. Tsunade pointed to the blank space next to her name on the scroll. Following Tsunade's instructions, Kabuto wrote his name on the scroll and then bit his thumb, pressing his fingerprint on it. The entire process of signing the contract was complete. Tsunade put away the scroll and said to Kabuto, now follow me and form hand seals. As you form the hand seals, channel your chakra. The size of the slug you can summon will depend on the amount of chakra you channel. Kabuto nodded and immediately began to form hand seals with Tsunade. Summoning technique. After completing the hand seals, Tsunade retracted her hand seals and cancelled the summoning. Kabuto, however, pressed his right hand down on the ground and summoned a slug that was just the right size for him to ride on. Sitting on the soft, slimy slug, Kabuto felt very uncomfortable. Tsunadesima, did you summon me? The slug spoke. Its voice was that of a sweet little girl. There were many summoning beasts in the ninja world that could speak, so no one found this strange. Tsunade said, "No, the boy on your back summoned you. He's the one who just signed the contract. His name is Kabuto." Kabuto hurriedly said to the slug under him, "Hello, I'm Yakushi Kabuto. Pleased to meet you." "Hello, Kabuto-sama. Pleased to meet you." The slug twisted its tentacles and looked at Kabuto on its back. After learning the slug's summoning technique, Kabuto had the slug return to the Shikatsu forest. Kakashi asked Tsunade, who was beside him, "Tsunade-sama, how are you going to arrange for Kabuto?" Tsunade said, "I'm going to leave the village tomorrow. If Kabuto agrees to learn the medical ninjutsu to treat Minato, he'll have to leave with me. With the talent he's shown, I estimate that he'll be able to come back and treat the 4th Hokage in about a year. But Kabuto isn't my disciple yet. You still need to ask him if he's willing to leave the village and train with me." After Kakashi told Yusuke and Kabuto about treating the 4th Hokage, he begged Yusuke, "I hope you can help with this. I'm eternally grateful." Yusuke patted Kabuto on the shoulder and said, "As a member of the village, if we can help the 4th Hokage recover, it's our duty. You should go train with Tsunade-sama. You can also see the world while you're training." Hearing Yusuke's words, Kabuto nodded and agreed to Kakashi's request. Kakashi was also relieved. He saw hope for his teacher's recovery, which solved a problem that had been on his mind for a long time. With everything settled, Tsunade told them the departure time for tomorrow and then left with Shizune. Although she hadn't successfully taken Kabuto as her disciple, Tsunade felt very sorry. But she didn't dwell on it. She quickly put it out of her mind. What truly made Tsunade sigh was Yusuke, whom she had met today. This young, strongest Uchiha, is indeed a character. She admired Yusuke's performance today. But while praising him, Tsunade couldn't help but think of the declining Senju clan, and she couldn't help but sigh. The next morning, with everyone's farewells, Kabuto left Konoha with Tsunade. As they were seeing them off, Izumi was reluctant to let Kabuto go. At the same time, she was also very envious. After all, Izumi hadn't left the village yet. She was full of longing for the world outside Konoha. Looking at the three figures gradually disappearing into the distance, Yusuke was secretly planning for Kabuto's future. Shikatsu Forest, Raichi Cave, Mount Myoboku. Kabuto, your path in the future may be more exciting than you can imagine. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 44. In a dimly lit room, 4 people clad in black cloaks with red clouds were engaged in conversation. The 4 were Obito, Zetsu, Konan, and Nagato. These 4 were the true core members of Akatsuki. Since Yahiko's death, Akatsuki had been completely reorganized. Not only had the members' uniforms been changed, but the entire organization's principles had undergone a drastic transformation. Nagato wasn't present in his true form. He had transformed Yahiko's corpse into the Diva Path Pain and was attending as Pain. Due to the ambush by Hanzo and Danzo in Omegakure, Nagato's legs were now crippled. Also, because he had summoned the outer path, Gedo Mazo, which had caused him to overdraw his chakra, Nagato now relied on special equipment to sustain his life. He had almost completely lost the ability to move. He could only act by controlling the 6 paths of pain. Obito could use Hashirama cells and White Zetsu's tissue to repair Nagato's legs and restore his lost vitality. However, that would also restore Nagato's strength to its peak or even further, which would be detrimental to his control. Therefore, Obito didn't do that. "How is the member recruitment going?" Obito asked, wearing a red, swirl-shaped mask. Obito was still acting under the guise of Madara, so Nagato and Konan still believed that the masked man in front of them was Uchiha Madara. "We have found a few good hands. Kakuzu, the rogue ninja from Takigakure, Kisame Hoshigaki, the rogue ninja from Kurigakure, and the recently recruited Sasori of the Red Sand," Konan said emotionlessly. Since Yahiko's death, Konan's personality had also completely changed. She, who had been gentle to everyone, had become cold. She always had a cold expression, as if she had lost her emotions. Hearing Konan's words, Obito frowned under his mask. "The progress is a bit slow. This number of members is far from enough. We need to gather at least 10 official members. We also hope to find suitable candidates to advance the organization's plan as soon as possible. But there aren't many experts who are independent of the various ninja villages. You provided the information on the previous members. Do you have any new candidates? Pain asked Obito coldly. In Akatsuki's plan, besides collecting the 9-tailed beasts, they also needed to gather a large amount of funds beforehand. This required enough manpower to prepare. Pain was currently arranging for members to take on high-paying bounty missions to raise funds. A while ago, Orochimaru, one of the Sannin of Konoha, defected. We recently discovered his hiding place. Orochimaru is a fickle person. We're worried that approaching him might be risky. But since you're the leader, you should decide whether or not to recruit him into the organization, Zetsu, who was on the side, said. Orochimaru isn't easy to deal with. He should be the strongest of the Sannin right now, Obito added. Pain didn't care about what Zetsu and Obito said. He said coldly, under these Rinnegan, Orochimaru can't do anything. Give me the information on his location. I'll personally go with Sasori. If Orochimaru agrees to join, we'll arrange for him to be Sasori's partner. If he doesn't agree, I'll just take care of him. A few days later, in a gloomy underground cave, Orochimaru had just sealed Shukaku's yin release chakra into his body's 4-symbol seal. Perfect. I feel incredibly powerful right now, Orochimaru said, a look of excitement on his pale face. At this time, if anyone familiar with Orochimaru were present, they would notice that Orochimaru was shorter than before. The reason for this was that Orochimaru had successfully completed his first, Edo Tensai. To perform the Edo Tensai and then seal Shukaku's yin release chakra into his new body, Orochimaru hadn't started the sealing process immediately after obtaining Shukaku. He had waited until now to complete the sealing. Because of the existence of Yusuke, his academic friend, Orochimaru's technical abilities were much higher than in the original story. The Edo Tensai, which should have been developed a few years later, had not only been completed ahead of time, but he had also found the 4-symbol seal, which could temporarily compensate for the huge flaw of his weakened mental power after the Edo Tensai. Looking at Shukaku, who had shrunk to half its size and only had yang release chakra left, Orochimaru was troubled. He didn't have a suitable vessel to seal Shukaku. If he sealed Shukaku as a Jinchuriki in another ninja's body, not only would the ninja need to have a suitable physique, but he would also need the corresponding sealing jutsu. The sealing jutsu for sealing Shukaku in a ninja's body to create a Jinchuriki was currently only researched by Sunagaku. Orochimaru didn't have the necessary conditions to create a one-tailed Jinchuriki. If he kept Shukaku, Orochimaru would have to personally watch over him. And Shukaku was hot-tempered and talkative, which made Orochimaru very annoyed. But releasing Shukaku would be a real waste. Therefore, the remaining half of Shukaku was completely useless in Orochimaru's hands. After thinking for a moment, Orochimaru decided to kill the half Shukaku directly. Although it was a pity, he didn't have the spare energy to watch over Shukaku. Of course, even if Orochimaru killed Shukaku, he wouldn't truly die. He would still reappear in the Nara desert not long after. I wonder if Yusuke has found the materials for the reverse 4-symbol seal, which can seal yang release chakra. Orochimaru couldn't help but think of Yusuke. If he could complete the reverse 4-symbol seal, now, the other half of Shukaku's yang release chakra wouldn't be wasted. When Yusuke first proposed the 4-symbol seal, he used Hashirama cells, which had incredibly powerful yang release, to seal yin release chakra, achieving the effect of using yang to control yin, forming the 4-symbol seal. The reverse 4-symbol seal actually worked on the same principle as the 4-symbol seal. It used a material with powerful yin release to control yang, forming a seal that could seal a large amount of yang release chakra. The Sharingan should be able to serve as a material for a seal that represents yin release power. But an ordinary Sharingan definitely won't do. It has to be at least the special Sharingan that Uchiha Shisui used when he fought Yusuke. But it would be a shame to use such a pair of eyes as a material for a seal. It's a waste, a waste. Temporarily putting aside the idea of the reverse 4-symbol seal, a cold glint flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. He slowly walked towards Shukaku. At that moment, two people wearing black cloaks with red clouds were approaching the cave where Orochimaru was. It seems like this is the place, Sasori said slowly, looking at the entrance-like cave in front of him. Sasori was hidden inside his puppet, Hiriko. The entire puppet's body was lying on the ground, and his voice, which had been specially processed, was very hoarse. It seems so. We didn't hide our tracks. Orochimaru should have noticed us, Pain said. As soon as the words left his mouth, Orochimaru slowly walked out of the cave. Orochimaru had just killed Shukaku, who only had yang release chakra left, when he discovered Pain and Sasori's arrival. Sensing that something was amiss, Orochimaru took the initiative to greet them at the entrance of the cave. He also wanted to test the strength of his newly reborn body, which had the four symbols seal implanted. In the original story, Orochimaru joined Akatsuki relatively late. And with Kabuto as an undercover agent under Sasori, Orochimaru had already learned a lot about Akatsuki's secrets when they came to him. But now, Kabuto had been taken by Yusuke, and Akatsuki had noticed Orochimaru earlier. Therefore, at this stage, Orochimaru was still very unfamiliar with Akatsuki. Looking at the diva path Pain in front of him, Orochimaru didn't recognize him as one of the three orphans he had met in a megacure with Jiraiya and Tsunade. For him, he had seen too many war orphans and didn't care. At this time, his attention was entirely on Pain's pair of ripple-shaped Rinnegan. These eyes are a very special dojutsu Kekkei Genkai. Orochimaru stuck out his snake-like tongue and licked his lips, thinking to himself. Although he saw Pain's extraordinary eyes at a glance, Orochimaru didn't recognize them as the legendary Rinnegan. But instinctively, he felt that these eyes were very powerful. When he was stared at by these eyes, Orochimaru felt like he was a defenseless prey being firmly locked onto by a hunter. Orochimaru, it's been a long time, Sasori, who was beside Pain, took the initiative to greet Orochimaru. Shifting his gaze from Pain to Hiriko, who was beside him, Orochimaru frowned and carefully observed him. He asked with an uncertain tone, "Are you Sasori of the Red Sand?" Orochimaru had met Sasori once. At that time, Sasori hadn't joined Akatsuki, and he hadn't hidden his body inside the puppet, Hiriko. But with Orochimaru's eyesight, he still noticed something unusual about the puppet. But he couldn't be completely sure. "Yes," Sasori replied. Orochimaru's signature sinister smile slowly appeared. "I wonder what brings you here to visit me, Sasori, dressed so oddly." Sasori snorted coldly, "You're the one who's dressed oddly. You should take a look at yourself. The Shimenawa doesn't suit you at all." Hearing Sasori's words, Orochimaru's smile faltered. He couldn't help but think of the night he traded Shukaku with Yusuke. Yusuke had also suggested that he change clothes. Could it be that these clothes really don't look good? Orochimaru couldn't help but begin to doubt himself. At this time, Orochimaru was still wearing his signature outfit, with a rope tied around his waist and a big bow tied behind it. This rope was called a Shimenawa in Japan. Pain snorted coldly, "Enough, Sasori. Don't talk about these irrelevant things. Let's get down to business." He didn't expect Sasori and Orochimaru to go off on a tangent and start talking about fashion. Sasori still had a certain amount of awe for Pain, who was powerful. He said to Orochimaru, "Our organization is recruiting some powerful ninjas as members. Your strength meets the requirements. You have two choices now. Join or die." For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 45. Hearing Sasori's words, Orochimaru's expression didn't change, but his eyes revealed a hint of killing intent. As one of the Sannin of Konoha, he held a very high position in the ninja world. Although he acknowledged that Sasori was a ninja of his level, Sasori's arrogant words, as if he had control over his life, made Orochimaru very angry. "Oh, then I'd like to see your skills, Sasori of the Red Sand," Orochimaru said with a smile, licking his lips. Since Sasori had come to him to practice, this was the perfect opportunity to test his new body's strength. But the man with the unknown dojutsu Kekkei Genkai beside him made Orochimaru very wary. It wasn't just because the man had the aura of a strong person. It was also because of the attitude that Sasori had shown towards him. "Are you going to attack together, or one at a time?" Orochimaru probed. Although he was confident in his ability to deal with Sasori, if his opponent had another ninja who was at the same level as Sasori or even stronger, Orochimaru would only have one choice: to run away. Sasori controlled Hiriko and took a few steps forward. He said slowly, "I'm enough." As soon as the words left his mouth, Hiriko's mechanical tail, which resembled a scorpion's tail, suddenly stabbed towards Orochimaru in front of him. The tip of the tail shone with a black luster, clearly poisoned. No one dared to underestimate the poison that Sasori made, including Orochimaru. Quickly dodging the attacking scorpion tail, Orochimaru charged towards Hiriko in front of him. Hiriko. Needle 8 waves. Hiriko's mouth opened, and countless poisoned needles shot out like rain towards Orochimaru, who was charging towards him. But Orochimaru brought his two hands together, and his body became as soft as a snake. Relying on his powerful snakeskin footwork, Orochimaru weaved through the dense needles like a snake. He dodged all the attacks without a scratch. At this time, Sasori was about to retreat and avoid Orochimaru, who was about to charge in front of him. Suddenly, 4 brown pythons, as thick as a man's legs, burst out of the ground beneath Hiriko, tightly biting Hiriko, preventing Sasori from moving. Orochimaru completed the hand seals for an earth release attack jutsu. Sharp earth spikes suddenly extended from the ground, completely piercing Hiriko. Seeing Hiriko destroyed, Orochimaru didn't show any joy. He realized that he had only destroyed one of Sasori's sand clones. In that instant, Sasori had retracted Hiriko into his storage scroll at lightning speed. At the same time, he created a sand clone to confuse Orochimaru, while he himself used a concealment technique to escape. As expected of Sasori of the red sand. "He's not so easy to kill." Orochimaru turned around and looked at Sasori, who had revealed himself. Although Sasori was actually in his 30s, he had made himself into a human puppet after escaping from Sunagakur. After his body became a puppet, he would no longer age and still retained his teenage appearance. Looking at Orochimaru, Sasori also knew that he had to use his true strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to defeat him. He took out a scroll with the character 3 written on it from his sleeve. With a puff of white smoke, a male human puppet with blue hair and a gray cloak appeared beside Sasori. "This is..." Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a look of recollection. Suddenly, his snake pupils contracted sharply in shock. "This is the third case cage. I can't believe that the third great ninja war was caused by you, Sasori of the red sand." The trigger of the third great ninja war was the disappearance of the third case cage. No one knew what had happened to the third case cage until the end of the war. But now, seeing the third case cage human puppet used by Sasori, everything was clear. Soon, Orochimaru put away his surprised expression. Instead, he showed a very interested look. He licked his lips and said, "I've always wanted to study the third case cage's magnet release." Sasori said emotionlessly, "Then your chance has come." At this time, Sasori's voice had also changed to that of a young boy. Hidden shadow snake hands. Orochimaru's right hand suddenly produced dozens of brown venomous snakes that charged towards Sasori and the third case cage human puppet. At the same time, the third case cage human puppet extended many mechanical arms from his right hand. 2 very similar techniques collided. The venomous snakes from Orochimaru were clearly far inferior in strength to the mechanical arms on the human puppet. They were instantly torn to shreds. Magnet release. Iron sand. At this time, the third case cage human puppet opened its jaw, and a large amount of black sand iron formed a dense sand iron rain that instantly enveloped Orochimaru's location. Magnet release and iron sand were the third case cage's unique bloodline limits. The sand iron refined by the third case cage using highly condensed chakra had a weight and destructive power far exceeding that of ordinary sand release jutsu. This was why the third case cage was known as the strongest case cage. Once invaded by sand iron, the target would not only be in extreme pain, but the third case cage could also use the sand iron to influence the target's chakra, causing them to lose their fighting ability. Faced with the third case cage's powerful magnet release jutsu, Orochimaru didn't dare to be careless. He immediately used his signature defensive jutsu to block the attack. Rashomon. A giant gate engraved with the face of an evil spirit rose from the ground, blocking Orochimaru. With a loud bang, the mechanical arms and sand iron rain from the third case cage human puppet hit Rashomon. Rashomon held on for a moment before being knocked down by the powerful attack. But this time was enough for Orochimaru to dodge Sasori's attack. After using Rashomon to block Sasori's firepower, Orochimaru went around behind Rashomon to Sasori's side. He quickly formed hand seals, and his body transformed into dozens of snow-white pythons, as thick as a man's arm, and attacked Sasori. There's something wrong with this technique. Pain, who was watching from the side, immediately noticed the hidden killing move in Orochimaru's technique through his Rinnegan. But Sasori, who was facing Orochimaru, didn't have such dojutsu. He didn't notice the trap hidden in Orochimaru's technique. Magnet release. Iron sand barrier. After the third cage human puppet flew into the sky, a large amount of black sand iron flew out of its body, forming countless sand iron spikes that extended continuously, covering the entire area. But to Sasori's surprise, the white snakes that Orochimaru had transformed into seemed to have no physical form. They passed through the sand iron barrier. At this time, it was too late to dodge. Dozens of white snakes swarmed forward and bit Sasori's body. The parts of Sasori that were bitten began to freeze until his entire body was completely covered in ice and snow, eventually forming a giant block of ice. The jutsu that Orochimaru used was called Genro Serpent Substitute. It was a clone jutsu that combined genjutsu with elemental chakra, which he had researched with Yusuke. But Yusuke's clones were crows, while Orochimaru's were snakes. This clone jutsu was very strange because it had no physical form. It could usually give the first enemy who encountered it a huge setback. And if the enemy couldn't discover the true principle of this jutsu, they would be helpless against it. It's a genjutsu clone combined with ice release. I've never heard of Orochimaru having ice release abilities. Pain, who was watching from the side, still had an emotionless expression, but he was very puzzled. He had also never heard of Orochimaru having the ice release bloodline limit. Pain had no idea that Orochimaru was no longer using his original body. He had used a forbidden technique to take over the body of a young ninja with the ice release bloodline limit. At this time, Orochimaru's body walked out of the giant block of ice that had sealed Sasori. He was very confident that his ice release had controlled Sasori's true body. He was about to take the third cage human puppet, which was suspended in midair, when he suddenly saw the human puppet spit out a sand iron spear from its mouth, stabbing towards him. Orochimaru quickly dodged, but he was also filled with doubt. The ice block definitely contains Sasori's real body. The third cage human puppet shouldn't have a controller anymore. Why is it still moving? Orochimaru thought to himself, carefully observing his surroundings. There. Suddenly, Orochimaru noticed a figure in a black robe hiding behind a large tree, using chakra threads to control the third cage human puppet. It turned out that when Sasori was frozen by Orochimaru, he had released a new puppet body when he realized he couldn't escape. At the same time, the core of reincarnation that contained his soul had separated from his original body and attached itself to the new puppet body. Sasori, I'll take care of this. Pain stopped Sasori, who was about to attack again, and prepared to defeat Orochimaru himself. In this brief exchange, Orochimaru had the upper hand. In Pain's view, Sasori alone wouldn't have much chance of defeating Orochimaru. Hearing Pain's words, Sasori rolled his eyes and said nothing more. Orochimaru turned to look at Pain, who was beside him. Suddenly, without warning, Orochimaru's body quickly stretched, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Pain. These eyes, I'll take them. Although Orochimaru didn't know that Pain's eyes were the Rinnegan, he instinctively felt that these eyes he had never seen before were not simple. Looking at Orochimaru, who was full of excitement, Pain remained cold. Shinra Tensei. With a giant impact, Orochimaru was knocked away. But because Orochimaru's body had been modified to be soft, this impact-type attack didn't cause much damage. Looking at Orochimaru, who was sprawled out in the distance, still dazed, Pain slowly extended his right hand. Bansho Tenin. Under the influence of Pain's Bansho Ten ability, Orochimaru felt a powerful gravitational force pulling him back in the opposite direction from where he had just flown. But Orochimaru was a veteran of countless battles. His reaction time was beyond normal. He immediately took countermeasures. Quickly forming hand seals, Orochimaru cast Uabami Serpent again. His body transformed into dozens of white pythons that bit towards Pain, who was constantly approaching. Looking at the dozens of white snakes viciously biting towards him, Pain remained calm. A slender black rod extended from his left sleeve. Die. Behind the dozens of white snakes, Orochimaru's ferocious face seemed to appear. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 46. Facing the dozens of white pythons charging towards him, Pain didn't panic. Holding the black rod in his left hand, he quickly stabbed forward repeatedly, each strike landing on the body of a white snake. Impossible. The white pythons emitted Orochimaru's voice. Struck by pain, they curled up together, reforming into Orochimaru. However, Orochimaru looked very disheveled. Not only was he being held aloft by Pain's right hand, but his body also had several bloody holes. These holes were clearly made by Pain's black rod. Just then, the hand holding Orochimaru began to freeze. Pain frowned and threw Orochimaru's body away forcefully. Orochimaru flipped several times in the air before finally stabilizing and stopping. Looking at the black rod in Pain's left hand, Orochimaru asked gloomily, "What kind of weapon is that? It can actually hit my genjutsu clone." Pain didn't answer Orochimaru. He just looked at him calmly and said, "Tell me your choice. Join or die." The black rod in Pain's hand was made using the power of the Rinnegan, combined with yin-yang release. This substance could harm genjutsu bodies made of yin release chakra. It could not only be used as a weapon, but more importantly, it could serve as a chakra sensor for the 6 paths of pain, which was the key to Nagato's control of the 6 paths of pain. However, Pain naturally wouldn't explain all this to Orochimaru. Hearing Pain's words, Orochimaru fell silent. Although he was very confident in his own strength and the power of the cursed seal hadn't been used yet, Orochimaru clearly felt that this enemy was completely different from his previous opponents. This man with the extraordinary dojutsu Kekkei Genkei seemed to have reached a higher level among ninjas. After thinking for a moment, Orochimaru's expression changed from gloomy to playful. He licked his lips and asked with interest, "Joining isn't impossible, but I need to know what your organization's purpose is." Whether he joined the organization or found a chance to escape, Orochimaru needed to understand the organization's purpose first. To collect all the tailed beasts and rule the ninja world with absolute power. Pain said calmly. His tone was very ordinary, as if it were a very simple and natural thing to accomplish. Interesting, interesting. Orochimaru laughed. He laughed for about 10 seconds before stopping. He looked at Pain and said slowly, "I'll join." Hearing that Pain's goal was to rule the ninja world by collecting all the tailed beasts, Orochimaru felt that this was a rare opportunity for him. His current, 4-symbol seal, only contained the yin release chakra of the one-tailed Shukaku. He also wanted to use the organization's power to obtain more tailed beast power. As for the one-tailed Shukaku he had just killed, Orochimaru didn't feel sorry at all. Instead, he was very relieved. If Shukaku had been discovered by the other side, not only would it have been taken away, but it would have also exposed the fact that he was also collecting tailed beasts. To be safe, Orochimaru also decided not to use the 4-symbol seal easily in front of Akatsuki members, in case they discovered any clues. Seeing that Orochimaru agreed to join the organization, Pain put away the black rod and casually threw something to Orochimaru. Orochimaru took it and opened his palm to see a ring with the character, "empty," engraved on it. "Put this ring on. You're now an official member of Akatsuki. From now on, your partner is Sasori." On the other side, Yusuke didn't know that Orochimaru had already joined Akatsuki ahead of time and was planning to use Akatsuki's power to collect tailed beasts. At this time, he was in the mental world, fighting Ryujin Jaka. He was training his soul power through this method. Ryujin Jaka, transformed into a human form, was still full of domineering energy. Every strike was powerful and wide-ranging. The flames on his weapon crackled with every swing. Facing Ryujin Jaka's powerful attack, Yusuke could only barely defend himself. He couldn't parry it. Ryujin Jaka's voice continued to ring in his ears. "Control your Reiatsu. Focus your Reiatsu on your weapon. Don't just defend. You have to find a chance to attack. You're the worst batch I've ever trained." With a clang, Ryujin Jaka swung his sword horizontally. Yusuke's weapon broke with a snap, and he was knocked away by the powerful impact. Sensing that Yusuke's remaining dojutsu power wasn't much, Ryujin Jaka said calmly, "That's enough for today." After months of training, Yusuke could clearly feel his soul power increasing. The most direct benefit was that his dojutsu power had improved. Originally, he could only last about 10 minutes in the mental world while fighting. Now, he could almost last 15 minutes. Another benefit was that his stamina had increased. Yusuke now slept less than he used to, but he was less prone to fatigue and his concentration had also improved. Besides his soul power, Yusuke's other gain was his improved swordsmanship. The swordsmanship style used by Ryujin Jaka was called Genryu, which had been created by Ryujin Jaka's former master, Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto. Under Ryujin Jaka's guidance, Yusuke was also constantly learning Genryu swordsmanship. The most important aspect of this swordsmanship style was Reiatsu control. It used Reiatsu to enhance the power of the sword techniques. Looking at the broken sword in his hand, Yusuke asked Ryujin Jaka, "When do you think you'll be able to learn Bankai?" Ryujin Jaka shook his head, "It's far from the time yet. The power of Bankai isn't something your current soul can handle. But when you can last half an hour in the mental world while fighting, you can try my first Bankai technique." After finishing his training that day, Yusuke secretly left Konoha village and went to an abandoned shrine. There was a swirl-shaped symbol on the roof beams of this abandoned shrine. It was the shrine of the Uzumaki clan. Hidden here was an artifact passed down by the Uzumaki clan for generations, the Death God Mask. The Death God Mask had a mysterious connection with the Death God. When a ninja wore the Death God Mask, they could summon the Death God even without using the Shikifujin technique. In the original story, Orochimaru had summoned the Death God through the Death God Mask, cut open the Death God's belly, released the souls of the fourth Hokage and his two hands, and restored his hands. Slowly entering the dilapidated shrine, Yusuke found a wall covered in masks. There were nearly 100 masks on the wall, each with a different, eerie, distorted face. It seemed like they had been deliberately arranged to hide the true Death God mask. But for Yusuke, who had powerful spiritual power, the Death God mask, which emitted a soul aura, was like a firefly in the dark. He could identify it at a glance. So this is the Death God mask. Yusuke slowly took down the mask with horns on its head and a distorted, grinning face. He carefully examined it. Yusuke had once mentioned the Death God of the Naruto world to Ryujin Jaka, and Ryujin Jaka was very interested. After all, it had once been the weapon of a Shinigami from Soul Society. It was curious about the Death God of the Naruto world. But after hearing Yusuke's description, Ryujin Jaka believed that the Death God of the Naruto world wasn't a true god who controlled the life and death of creatures in the Naruto world. It was more like a powerful demon that fed on souls. Yusuke thought about Ryujin Jaka's insight, and he felt that it made sense. After all, when Orochimaru cut open the Death God's belly in the original story, he only released the souls of the Hokage sealed by the Shikifujin technique and Orochimaru's two hands. This showed that the so-called Death God only controlled the souls sealed by the Shikifujin technique. From this perspective, Shikifujin was more like a summoning technique. The caster sacrifices their soul to summon the Death God and uses the Death God to reap the enemy's soul. In Yusuke's plan, he was thinking of using the Death God's power to complete the reverse 4 symbol seal. The Death God itself was a pure soul form and fed on souls. It was composed of very pure yin release chakra, which could potentially meet the seal's requirements for yin release materials. Although I've confirmed with Ryujin Jaka that it, as a Zanpakuto, can kill the Death God, a spiritual demon, I can't assess the Death God's strength. If I summon it and I'm not its opponent, I'll die a pointless death. Yusuke thought for a moment. To be safe, he put the Death God mask into his storage scroll. He decided not to summon the Death God until he was ready. The next day, Yusuke went to the Hinoharu tea house, which was his favorite tea house in Konoha village. "Huh, it's you." Yusuke was surprised to see the girl he had met before. At this time, the girl was wearing a floral apron. Her light gray hair was still in 2 pigtails that stuck out over her shoulders. She looked cute and playful. The girl was also delighted to see Yusuke. She ran over in small steps. "Yusuke-sama, it's been a while." Yusuke also smiled. "You've already become a ninja. Why are you back working as a tea house waitress?" Hearing Yusuke's words, the girl was still smiling, but her eyes revealed a hint of sadness. "Being a ninja really isn't for me. When I was a child, I always looked up to the dashing ninja adults. I always dreamed of becoming a ninja one day, someone everyone admired. But after actually carrying out missions, I realized how cruel the ninja world is." From the girl's words, Yusuke learned that she was actually Itachi's former teammate, named Inari Shinko. During the mission when Itachi awakened his Sharingan, the captain, Mizuno Toyuki, and his teammate, Izumo Tenma, died in battle. Inari Shinko was also seriously injured and took several months to recover. Inari Shinko, who had felt the cruelty of the ninja world, realized that she didn't have the talent to become a ninja. She gave up on the ninja path and returned to the tea house to work as a waitress. I don't have Itachi's extraordinary talent, and I can't accept the fact that my comrades died in front of me. Maybe this tea house is the best place for me, Inari Shinko said, as if she was lost in some bad memories. Coming back to her senses, Inari Shinko saw that Yusuke was patiently listening to her. She suddenly felt embarrassed, her cheeks flushed, and she hurriedly said, "I'm sorry, Yusuke-sama. I've wasted so much of your time listening to this little girl complain." Yusuke smiled and shook his head, signaling her not to mind. The two didn't chat for long. Inari Shinko went back to her waitress duties. Looking at the girl's busy figure, Yusuke picked up the remaining tea in his hand and drank it in one gulp. But his mind was filled with thoughts. The 5 great nations, Akatsuki, countless independent small countries, Obito and others lurking in the shadows. This world is truly chaotic and incredibly cruel. And I've come here with such powerful strength, Ryujin Jaka. Can I do anything for this world? For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual reader 15 advanced chapters. Intermediate reader 30 advanced chapters. Expert reader 60 advanced chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 47. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. 3 years wasn't a long time, but a lot had happened in the ninja world. There was a local war between Tsunagaker and Iwagakure. Tsunagaker's hero ninja, Pakura, suddenly disappeared. The outside world speculated that she might have died in battle against Iwagakure ninjas. The 4th Cage went to the Nara desert, captured Shukaku, and sealed it inside his own son, Gaara. However, according to those in the know, the Shukaku that the 4th Cage captured seemed to be much smaller than a normal tailed beast. The reason is still unknown. Some experts have analyzed that this might be due to the tailed beast evolving and developing reproductive abilities. The Shukaku that the 4th Cage captured wasn't the real one-tailed Shukaku. It was its son. An unknown mysterious organization appeared in the ninja world. Its members specialized in taking on high-paying bounty missions. And no matter what the mission was, they could almost always complete it 100%, which attracted the attention of many forces. Rumors spread that a mysterious person with long black hair and pale skin appeared in many small ninja villages with powerful bloodline limits. He specialized in kidnapping talented teenagers or children. The relevant departments in each village began to organize forces to find the mysterious person. These were some of the major events that had attracted attention in the ninja world over the past 3 years. At this time, Yusuke was fighting his human form of Ryujin Jaka in the mental world. Yusuke was now 1.85 meters tall. His body had also become tall and strong, no longer looking slightly thin like he did when he was younger. Ryujin Jaka's human form was still exactly the same as Yusuke's. They both held a katana burning with raging flames and attacked each other. The 9-tailed fox was watching their fight from a distance, trembling. After 3 years of training, Yusuke's soul power had become incomparable to what it was before. He could now last nearly half an hour in the mental world, fighting Ryujin Jaka in his Shikai form. Yusuke could now control the outward projection of his Reiatsu and use it to intimidate his opponents. If the opponent's mental power was weak, they would find it very difficult to speak under Yusuke's Reiatsu. In severe cases, they would even suffer a mental breakdown. Not enough. Your Reiatsu needs to be stronger. Your sword lacks domineering energy. How can you unleash the true power of my Ryujin Jaka? Although Yusuke could now fight Ryujin Jaka back and forth, unlike 3 years ago when he could only defend and couldn't counterattack, Yusuke's performance still wasn't good enough to satisfy Ryujin Jaka. Their fight was as fast as lightning. The blades flashed, and the area was filled with crimson flames. After blocking Yusuke's slash with his sword, Ryujin Jaka used the recoil to retreat and create distance. We've had enough training for today. Let's try the power of Bankai. Ryujin Jaka said to Yusuke. Yusuke nodded. Following Ryujin Jaka's instructions for Bankai, he controlled his Reiatsu and sealed all the flames on the blade into the weapon in his hand. The flames that had been wrapped around Yusuke's body and the surface of his weapon all quickly disappeared into the blade of the katana in his hand. The entire blade shone with a crimson light. At this time, Yusuke was performing one of Ryujin Jaka's Bankai forms, Great Fire Sword. This Bankai form was the Bankai ability of Ryujin Jaka that Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto used before he mastered his Bankai, Zanka No Tachi. The ability of Great Fire Sword was to seal all the flames inside the Zanpakuto. When it was swung, it would unleash intense flames, burning whatever it struck to ashes. A flash of fire appeared in Yusuke's eyes. He swung the Great Fire Sword towards Ryujin Jaka. Ryujin Jaka, however, frowned. He thrust his sword forward, the tip accurately striking the blade of the Great Fire Sword in Yusuke's hand. With just a tap of the tip of his sword, Ryujin Jaka caused the Reiatsu of the Great Fire Sword in Yusuke's hand to become unstable. The flames that had been sealed inside the blade instantly leaked out again, and it returned to its Shikai form. I failed again, Yusuke sighed, looking at the katana in his hand. Ryujin Jaka put away his weapon. His expression was serious. Yusuke, do you know why you still can't master Bankai? It's not just a matter of controlling your Reiatsu. More importantly, you haven't mastered the Will of Fire. Hearing the words, Will of Fire, Yusuke's facial muscles twitched involuntarily. Although he knew that the Will of Fire that Ryujin Jaka was talking about wasn't the same as the one passed down through generations in Konoha, it still felt strange. You don't have the spirit of charging forward, and you don't have the domineering energy of being the best. How can you unleash my true power like that? Think about what I've said. Ryujin Jaka transformed into a flame and slowly disappeared, leaving Yusuke lost in thought. After thinking for a long time, looking at Ryujin Jaka, which stood in the mental world, piercing the heavens and earth, Yusuke couldn't help but smile wryly, the spirit of charging forward and the domineering energy of being the best. Although it sounds simple, it's not easy to truly achieve these two things. Outside the 4th Hokage's ward, Itachi and Izumi were waiting quietly. Itachi and Izumi were both 10 years old now. But in the world of Naruto, many teenagers this age could already work. Even many ninjas who were carrying out missions outside were this age. Izumi had passed the Chunin exams a year ago and was promoted to Chunin. Now, they were both wearing Konoha Chunin uniforms. But instead of the red swirl symbol on the back of the uniforms, it was the Uchiha clan crest. After 3 years of growth, they had both changed a lot. First, their appearance had changed. Not only had they both grown taller, but the childishness on their faces had also diminished. Itachi's face even had deep stress lines, giving him a strange sense of age. They both now had a single ponytail hairstyle, but Itachi's ponytail was lower, with his hair close to his back. Izumi's ponytail was higher, making her look heroic and dashing. At this time, the door to the 4th Hokage's ward slowly opened. Kabuto and Kakashi walked out. Kakashi was the same age as Yusuke. He now looked almost the same as he did when he first appeared in the original story. But he was still carrying a short sword on his back. He hadn't given up on the swordsmanship of the Hitaki clan. Kabuto was still wearing the black round-rimmed glasses that Yahiko gave him. He was also wearing the Konoha Chunin uniform. His face now had a more mature look, and he didn't have the cunning that he displayed in the original story. How was the treatment today? Izumi asked. She and Itachi had come with Kabuto. Since Kabuto had returned to Konoha more than a year ago, he had been treating the 4th Hokage regularly every day, slowly stimulating the 4th Hokage's brain nerves with gentle chakra. Kabuto shook his head. It will still be a while before the 4th Hokage-sama wakes up. The 4th Hokage-sama's brain nerves have gradually regained their vitality, but he probably won't wake up anytime soon. And even if the 4th Hokage-sama regains consciousness, his body hasn't moved for so long. He'll need a long recovery period before he can regain his original strength. Kakashi said gratefully, it doesn't matter if it takes a long time. As long as sensei recovers, that's enough. I'll need you to continue working hard in the future. Kabuto hurriedly said, Kakashi-senpai, you're too kind. This is something I should be doing. Itachi, Izumi, and Kabuto said goodbye to Kakashi at the hospital and then went to the Hokage Tower to pick up a mission. Since they had all become Chunin, they had formed a 3-person team and carried out missions in Konoha village. The 3 of them were exceptionally skilled and performed very well in many missions. They had also gained a lot of fame in Konoha. After the three of them picked up their mission and left the Hokage's office, they happened to run into Danzo, who was going to the Hokage's office. The atmosphere immediately became tense. Since the Uchiha clan had moved to the outermost area of Konoha village 3 years ago, their relationship with the various forces within the village had become increasingly tense. Their relationship with Danzo could be described as hostile. Under the instructions of Konoha's high-ranking officials, Danzo had been constantly uniting various clans to suppress the Uchiha clan. But most of the Uchiha clan members were unwilling to be bullied. They resisted from various angles, causing many serious incidents within the village. Most of these incidents ended with the Uchiha clan losing. And with Danzo secretly stirring up trouble, the Uchiha clan's reputation within the village had also been greatly affected. As the situation became increasingly severe, the radicals within the Uchiha clan had many dangerous ideas. And the clan leader, Uchiha Fugaku, who was a moderate, could no longer suppress the radicals within the clan. Since witnessing the duel between Yusuke and Shisui 3 years ago, many Uchiha clan members believed that Shisui was already an expert comparable to the Sannin. Yusuke, who had defeated Shisui, was naturally even better. Besides Shisui and Yusuke, plus the unassuming clan leader, Uchiha Fugaku, the Uchiha clan's high-level combat power was already formidable. And now, among Konoha's high-ranking officials, the third Hokage and Danzo were both old and decrepit. The fourth Hokage was still in a coma. The Sannin, who had top-level combat power, had all left the village. With the Uchiha clan's high-level combat power exceeding that of Konoha's high-ranking officials, the radicals within the Uchiha clan naturally felt that their clan's power had surpassed that of Konoha's high-ranking officials. But their clan's power didn't match their rights and influence in the village. This caused many Uchiha clan members to be dissatisfied with the current clan leader, Uchiha Fugaku. Glancing at Itachi and the others with his sinister eyes, Danzo recognized these up-and-coming stars who had recently become famous in Konoha village. But these three were all disciples of Uchiha Yusuke. Therefore, for him, they were just enemies who needed to be eliminated. Out of courtesy between superiors and subordinates, Itachi and the others bowed to Danzo. But Danzo didn't respond. Watching Danzo slowly enter the third Hokage's office, Itachi unconsciously frowned. He vaguely felt that something big was about to happen. Itachi, what are you thinking about? We should go, Izumi said, pulling on Itachi's clothes when she saw that he was standing there motionless. Itachi came back to his senses and said slightly, sorry. I was just spacing out. Before we leave the village, I want to go see Sasuke at the kindergarten. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 48. In the Konoha kindergarten, a group of children who looked 4 or 5 years old were playing on the playground, laughing and playing in groups of 2 or 3. Naruto, with his yellow spiky hair, was among them, sharing a bag of potato chips with the chubby Choji. On Choji's other side, Shikamaru was staring blankly at the sky, looking bored. Because the fourth Hokage was in a coma, the third Hokage, in order to hide Naruto's identity, still sent him to the orphanage to be raised. But because the fourth Hokage was still alive, Naruto's treatment was much better than in the original story. The third Hokage not only instructed the orphanage to take good care of him, but he also controlled the public opinion, preventing villagers from being afraid or discriminating against Naruto. Naruto was originally a sunny and cheerful child. Without being ostracized by the environment, he easily made friends with the other children in the kindergarten, including several of the Konoha 11. Huh, it's that stinky brat. As he was fighting Choji for the last potato chip, Naruto suddenly saw Sasuke, who was standing on the side with his hands in his pockets and a haughty expression, walking over alone. Sasuke was followed by several little girls with hearts in their eyes. Humph, what's so great about him? He always acts like he's the best in the world, Naruto said to Choji and Shikamaru on the side. But he was distracted, and Choji successfully snatched the last potato chip. Naruto's voice wasn't small. Not only did Sasuke hear him, but the little girls behind Sasuke also heard him. They immediately started attacking him with their chattering. For a while, Naruto was very annoyed. It was obvious that Naruto wasn't the type who was popular with little girls. Seeing this, Sasuke smirked. He didn't bother with Naruto and was about to leave. But Naruto, whose anger had nowhere to go from being attacked by those little girls, jumped up and pointed at Sasuke, shouting, "Sasuke, you little punk, do you dare to fight me?" After all, he, Naruto, was a man. Even if he was angry, he couldn't vent it on those little girls. He could only target Sasuke. Besides, those girls who looked unfriendly seemed even more difficult to deal with than Sasuke. "Naruto, I'm from the Uchiha clan. I wouldn't stoop to fighting with a commoner like you," Sasuke said calmly, lifting his chin slightly. As he spoke, Sasuke didn't turn around. He kept his hands in his pockets and walked in the direction he had been going. Seeing Sasuke's calm and handsome demeanor, the little girls screamed wildly. They were clearly captivated by Sasuke's aura. On the other hand, Naruto was furious at Sasuke's arrogant attitude. "Ah, I can't stand this guy. I have to teach him a lesson today." Before he finished speaking, Naruto had already raised his fist and charged towards Sasuke, who was facing away from him. Shikamaru, who was on the side, quickly reached out to grab him, but it was too late. Hearing the commotion behind him, Sasuke smirked slightly. Then, he quickly turned around, grabbed Naruto's fist with one hand and Naruto's outstretched arm with the other. With a thud, Sasuke performed a graceful over-the-shoulder throw, sending Naruto tumbling to the ground, dizzy and disoriented. Sasuke's entire movement was smooth and effortless, showing his cool demeanor. It caused the little girls behind him to scream wildly again. At this time, Sakura and Ino, who had just walked out of the school building, saw this scene and immediately joined the little girls' ranks, cheering for Sasuke. As Sasuke and Naruto were fighting, Izumi, Itachi, and Kabuto were watching the amusing scene from afar under a tree not far from the kindergarten gate. "Sasuke's pretty good. He's got some of your skills," Izumi said with a smile to Itachi, who was beside her. "It's just that he's practiced a lot. And if they were really fighting, he wouldn't be Naruto's opponent," Itachi said slowly, watching Naruto, who quickly got back on his feet. Itachi didn't know that Naruto was the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, but his naturally keen senses allowed him to perceive the powerful vitality within Naruto's body. Although Sasuke had more training and skills than the other boy, he could tell that even if Sasuke hit the other boy 10 times, it wouldn't cause much damage. But if the other boy landed one punch on Sasuke, it would be enough to knock him down. "I'm not talking about his fighting skills. I'm talking about his skills in attracting girls," Izumi added with a smile. Hearing Izumi's words, Itachi's eye twitched involuntarily. He pretended not to hear anything. "You're a bad guy. You're bullying Naruto." A 4 or 5-year-old boy stood in front of Naruto. The boy who spoke was also 4 or 5 years old. He had long brown hair and wore a round hat. He had round cheeks with 2 patches of blush, making him look very cute. This little boy's name was Yoda. He was Naruto's best friend in kindergarten. Yoda wasn't originally a villager of Konoha. He was brought back by Tsunade and Kabuto when they returned to Konoha. About 2 years ago, Tsunade and Kabuto had encountered Yoda while traveling. At that time, he was terminally ill, but Tsunade's powerful medical ninjutsu had saved his life. But because Yoda had a bloodline disease that was difficult to completely cure, and it could recur, he needed continuous treatment to have a chance of a true recovery. Therefore, Tsunade proposed that if Yoda wanted to continue receiving treatment, he had to go with her. Yoda's parents were reluctant to be separated from their child, but thinking about Yoda's life and the fact that he would be going to Konoha, which was one of the safer places in the ninja world, they eventually agreed to let Yoda leave with Tsunade and Kabuto. After Tsunade taught Kabuto how to treat Yoda, Kabuto became Yoda's doctor and nanny. Originally, it wouldn't have been so easy for someone like Yoda, even a child, to stay in Konoha for a long time. But because he was brought back by Tsunade, the princess of Konoha and one of the Sannin, after a simple review by the village's examiners, he was registered as a resident of Konoha and successfully stayed in Konoha. "Yoda, this doesn't concern you. I advise you not to meddle. Besides, Naruto started it." Sasuke snorted. As he spoke, Sasuke glanced arrogantly at Yoda, his hands in his pockets. He said calmly, "And you, a mere outsider, do you think you have the power to stop me?" Sasuke's words were full of aura. All the children present were intimidated by Sasuke's powerful presence. The large playground was silent. Seeing this, Yoda was also startled by Sasuke's aura. He thought he had encountered a very powerful opponent. Yoda didn't dare to be careless. He mustered all his strength and roared. Suddenly, a blizzard of snow drifted from Yoda's location towards Sasuke, turning Sasuke into a snowman, with only his head exposed. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 49. Sasuke's arrogant expression hadn't had time to change. His eyes were filled with shock. Impossible. I, Uchiha Sasuke, was actually defeated by this unremarkable outsider. Sasuke, wrapped in snow and unable to move, couldn't accept this reality. Seeing that Sasuke had been defeated in one move by Yoda, who seemed ordinary, all the children watching were stunned. They hadn't expected that Sasuke, who had been so imposing a second ago, would be subdued in the next. At this time, a group of little girls came to their senses. They immediately went forward to help Sasuke remove the snow from his body. Naruto scratched his head. He hadn't expected his friend to defeat that stinky Sasuke so easily. The reason why Yoda could defeat Sasuke so easily was because he had a very powerful bloodline limit, weather manipulation. Because he was still young, Yoda wasn't very proficient in manipulating the weather. He often activated his bloodline limit ability based on his emotions. For example, when Yoda was happy, the weather nearby would become very sunny. When Yoda was sad, it would rain heavily. Yoda could control the power of the weather with precision. For example, he could focus the rain on a very small area to attack an enemy. This would even cause the enemy to be directly overwhelmed by a large amount of rain and unable to stand. But because of Yoda's powerful talent, he also had a bloodline disease that was difficult to cure, just like Kimimaro. If he hadn't met Tsunade and Kabuto, Yoda would have died around this age, just like in the original story. Later, he would have been resurrected by Orochimaru's Edo Tensei technique. At this time, Itachi, who was under a tree nearby, slowly turned his head to look at Kabuto, who was beside him. But there seemed to be a glimmer of killing intent hidden in his calm eyes. After all, Yoda, who had taught his precious little brother a lesson, was now under Kabuto's care. Kabuto, who was being watched by Itachi, pretended not to see him. He pushed up his glasses, but a bead of cold sweat slowly dripped down his forehead. Seeing this, Izumi covered her mouth with her hand and tried to hold back her laughter. At the same time, in the third Hokage's office. Sarutobi, I've received information that the Uchiha clan is planning a coup. The situation is urgent. We need to respond immediately. Danzo sat opposite the third Hokage and said in a deep voice. At this time, the third Hokage also frowned. He said slowly, I also heard from Shisui. The radicals within the Uchiha clan do have some ideas, but it hasn't reached the point of a coup. We shouldn't take drastic measures now. That will only exacerbate the conflict with the Uchiha clan. Danzo was furious when he heard this. He slammed his fist on the table and stood up. Humph, Sarutobi Hiruzen, it's because of your indecision that we're in this situation. What gradual weakening of the Uchiha clan, gradually dismantling their power, that's all nonsense. Although I hate the Uchiha, I have to admit that they are truly gifted. They produce experts one after another. Not to mention that Uchiha Yusuke, there are also many talented young people in their clan. You want to use Shisui to win over Uchiha Itachi to root. That plan has already failed. If something happens to Shisui, and he's no longer under your control, do you think we'll be able to stand up to the Uchiha clan? As he said this, Danzo couldn't help but think of a conflict he had with Yusuke a year ago. At that time, Root had discovered a child with a powerful bloodline limit that could control the weather. Danzo ordered his men to bring the child to Root. Unfortunately, the Root members who were sent returned empty-handed. The child was actually staying with the Uchiha clan, temporarily living in Yusuke's home. After learning this information, Danzo wasn't willing to give up on the child. He even went there himself, planning to take the child away by force. But when he arrived at the Uchiha clan and encountered Yusuke, he realized that Yusuke at that time was already an opponent that Root couldn't handle. As the two sides faced each other, the aura that Uchiha Yusuke exuded was something that he and all the Root ninjas present couldn't resist. The shock that seemed to come from the soul level made him lose all courage to snatch the child away. Actually, Yusuke had already mastered the ability to project Reiatsu at that time. This was how Yusuke intimidated Danzo, preventing him from acting rashly. The third Hokage also knew about this incident. He had originally thought that Danzo, who had gone to the Uchiha clan headquarters himself, would definitely succeed. But he didn't expect Danzo to give up in the end. Later, when he asked Danzo what had happened, Danzo didn't tell the real reason, which was that he was terrified at the time. He just gave a perfunctory explanation that he didn't want to cause a large-scale conflict with the Uchiha clan for now. Hearing Danzo's analysis of the Uchiha clan's strength, the third Hokage adjusted his sitting posture. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and fell into thought. After a moment, the third Hokage opened his eyes and said slowly, "Let's use Shisui's eyes to control Fugaku." Although Fugaku's control over the clan is no longer strong, he's still the clan leader, and his personal strength is also very strong. We can control him and then use more forceful methods to focus on attacking the radicals within the Uchiha clan. No, Danzo objected at this time. Shisui's so-called Koto Amatsukami ability has never been used. The effect of the ability is completely uncertain. And if it fails, it will alert them, and Shisui's identity will be completely exposed. Although Danzo said this, he was actually considering three other factors. First, Danzo had his sights set on Shisui's Sharingan. He didn't want to use Koto Amatsukami, which had a very long cooldown, at this time. Second, if Shisui used his ability to control Uchiha Fugaku wouldn't obey him. He would obey the third Hokage. This would be meaningless for him and Danzo. And if the Uchiha clan were truly brought under the third Hokage's control, it would make it more difficult for him to compete for the Hokage position in the future. Third, for Danzo, who hated the Uchiha clan, they had no reason to exist. It was better to completely eliminate them. Hearing Danzo's objections, the third Hokage thought for a moment and felt that there was some truth to it. He asked back, "Then do you have any suitable plans?" A cold smile curled up at the corner of Danzo's mouth. His left eye, which was exposed from the bandage, narrowed, flashing a sharp gleam. "Of course. As long as you agree, this plan will be foolproof. The Uchiha, this tumor, will disappear from the ninja world completely." For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 50. After Danzo and the third Hokage's secret meeting, nearly a month passed. At this time, in the Uchiha clan headquarters, inside Yusuke's laboratory, an important experiment was reaching a crucial point. Yusuke, who was in the laboratory, had activated the four-symbol seal. His skin was covered in black inscriptions, and 6 pale blue orbs were slowly rotating around his body. These 6 orbs were yin release chakra that Yusuke had extracted from the 9-tailed fox's body within the seal. He was using them to experiment with generating yin release materials that met the requirements of the reverse 4-symbol seal. Standing on a sealing formation covered in inscriptions, Yusuke quickly formed hand seals. Yin release seal. As Yusuke completed the technique, the 6 pale blue yin release chakra orbs slowly converged and merged towards the center of the sealing formation, eventually forming a substance that looked like a liquid. But Yusuke, who had experimented countless times, knew that this form of condensed yin release chakra could only last for a very short time. Once he released the technique, this liquid form of yin release chakra would immediately disperse and return to its original state. My previous thinking was too rigid. I always thought of developing jutsu using ninja methods. But now I have the power of the Death God. Powerful Reiatsu erupted from Yusuke's body. If a normal person were standing beside Yusuke at this time, they would probably suffer a mental breakdown from this powerful Reiatsu. Focusing his spiritual power, Yusuke controlled his Reiatsu and continuously gathered and compressed the liquid form of yin release chakra. Gradually, under the influence of the Reiatsu, the yin release chakra was further compressed, eventually forming a pale blue crystal-like substance. Success. Seeing that the yin release chakra had successfully condensed into a solid crystal, Yusuke was very excited. For the past 3 years, he had been looking for a way to solidify yin release chakra. Now, he had finally succeeded. Releasing the seal and the sealing formation beneath his feet, Yusuke reached out and picked up the pale blue crystal, which was floating in midair. He carefully examined it. It's actually feasible to use yin release chakra directly to make the basic materials for a seal. But this quality of yin release chakra crystal isn't enough. I need to use more refined and powerful yin release chakra to make the crystal. When I can initially use the power of Bankai, I should be able to try summoning the death god. I believe the death god's soul power should be enough to serve as the yin release material for the reverse 4 symbol seal. In a dark cave, there were dozens of stone platforms. On some of the platforms, stood a figure in a black cloak with red clouds. The figure standing on the most central platform was the Diva Path Pain, who had the Rinnegan. The other figures were all the current official members of Akatsuki. At this time, these figures were actually Pains, Shoten no Jutsu, using the Rinnegan. This jutsu could use the caster, Pain, as a receiving tower to receive thoughts waves converted from chakra by other Akatsuki members and project these thought waves to specific locations, allowing Akatsuki members in different locations to communicate. In terms of effect, Shoten no Jutsu was equivalent to a modern remote video conferencing tool. Hey, didn't we just have a meeting a while ago? Why are we having another meeting today? I was planning to pay my respects to the great god of the evil path today. A flamboyant voice rang out. The speaker was Hidan, the newest member of Akatsuki, whose code name was 3 Stage. The new member seems very energetic. I hope he won't be killed by you too soon, Kakuzu, a sinister, hoarse voice rang out. This voice belonged to Orochimaru, who had joined Akatsuki 3 years ago. What? I'll kill him? You're kidding. I'm a loyal believer of the great god of the evil path. Even if all of you die, I won't die, Hidan said with dissatisfaction. In just 3 years, 3 official members of Akatsuki had died in battle, and they had all been Kakuzu's partners. But none of these members had died at the hands of enemies. They had all died at the hands of Kakuzu. And Kakuzu's explanation was very simple and straightforward: accidental killing. Although this guy talks a lot, always chattering incessantly, I really want to kill him. But his physique is truly special. Even I can't completely kill him, Kakuzu said slowly. Oh, interesting. Hidan, would you mind coming to me for a full body examination? Orochimaru licked his lips with interest. I'm interested too, if I can. Sasori, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly interjected. He was clearly also interested in Hidan's immortal physique. Hearing Orochimaru and Sasori's words, Hidan was very angry. Hey, you bastards, what do you think of other people's bodies? Do you believe me when I say I'll take you all to sacrifice to the great god of the evil path? Enough with the idle chatter. There's a high-paying bounty mission. I'm planning to send 4 members to carry it out, Pain's cold voice rang out. Hearing the leader, Pain's, words, the group that had been chatting quieted down. High-paying bounty. What's the specific amount? Kakuzu, Akatsuki's chief financial officer, became interested. 150 million, Pain slowly said, a number that shocked everyone. Also, the employer, as a sign of good faith, has already paid 50 million in advance. As long as we successfully complete the mission, the employer will pay the remaining 100 million. As soon as Pain finished speaking, the scene fell silent. In the original story, Asuma, one of the 12 guardian ninja of the Land of Fire, had a bounty of 35 million. The bounty for the 6-tailed Jinchuriki, Utakata, was only 50 million. Although most of Akatsuki's members were worldly and experienced, they were shocked by the huge bounty of 150 million. Since the employer can offer a bounty of 150 million, this mission must not be simple. What exactly are we supposed to do? A figure with a Kurigakure decapitation sword on his back spoke. The figure was Kisame Hoshigaki, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The employer's request is an assassination mission. Although it's assassination, ambush might be a more accurate term. The employer will lure the target to a designated location. We'll just completely eliminate the target who arrives at the location, Pain said slowly. Hearing Pain's words, all the Akatsuki members were very curious to know who the target was that could make the employer spend such a large amount of money. What a disgusting mission. It's obvious that some big shot is playing a game of eliminating enemies, Orochimaru said with a smile. Could the target be one of the Cage of the 5 Great Villages? That would be great. If I could sacrifice Akage's life to the great god of the evil path, I'm sure the great god would feel my faith. Hidan shouted. Scanning the members, Pain said slowly, the target is Uchiha Yusuke, the Jonin of Konoha village in the Land of Fire. He is also the current strongest member of the Uchiha clan. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 1 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 51. Is it him? Hearing Yusuke's name from Pain, Orochimaru couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Everyone turned their gaze towards Orochimaru's shadow. Since he's a Konoha ninja, you must have a lot of information about him, Orochimaru, Kakuzu asked. Since the bounty for the mission was very considerable, Kakuzu was determined to get it. Orochimaru chuckled ominously, Yusuke-kun, huh. He's indeed a difficult ninja to deal with. Unfortunately, I don't know his weaknesses at the moment, so I can't give the organization much advice. Oh, what kind of ninja is he? Kakuzu was very dissatisfied with Orochimaru's answer and continued to ask. Ninjutsu, Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Yusuke-kun is an expert in all of them. He's a well-rounded ninja, Orochimaru said. Even though the target is from the same village as you, you're praising him too much, aren't you? Hidan obviously didn't believe Orochimaru's words. Orochimaru ignored Hidan and continued to say, Yusuke-kun is skilled in all kinds of jutsu, but his strongest is fire-release jutsu. In terms of taijutsu, he uses a kind of fire-based swordsmanship. It's not hard to guess that this is his strongest ability from his nickname, Flame Sword. As for genjutsu, he's also very proficient. After all, he's from the Uchiha clan. Also, I don't recommend sending Sasori for this mission. After all, his puppets are quite fragile. They wouldn't be able to withstand a few of Yusuke-kun's fires. Hearing Orochimaru point out that he wasn't suitable for this mission, Sasori felt offended. He snorted coldly and said with displeasure, Orochimaru, are you underestimating me? Orochimaru laughed, I didn't mean it that way. It's just that ninja abilities naturally have their strengths and weaknesses. You just happen to be countered by Yusuke-kun. Sasori was still unhappy with Orochimaru's explanation, you're still underestimating me. I have to participate in this mission. I'll personally turn this guy you've hyped up into a human puppet. At this time, Kakuzu also requested to participate in the mission. After all, with a bounty of 150 million in front of him, Kakuzu, who had a strong obsession with money, couldn't rest easy if he didn't personally participate in this mission. Since Sasori and Kakuzu both volunteered to take on the mission, Pain decided, then this mission will be entrusted to your two teams, Kakuzu and Sasori. However, Orochimaru, who was partnered with Sasori, objected to Pain's decision, leader, I'm sorry, I'm refusing to participate in this mission. After all, Yusuke-kun and I have been friends for many years. It wouldn't be convenient for me to attack him. Since Akatsuki always operated in pairs, Orochimaru had been hampered by Sasori ever since he became his partner. For Orochimaru, this mission was a chance to temporarily get rid of Sasori. This was also one of the reasons why Orochimaru pointed out Sasori. He hoped that Sasori, who had been goaded, would go to participate in the mission to ambush Yusuke. Pain agreed to Orochimaru's request and instead assigned Kisame Hoshigaki to replace Orochimaru. However, considering that Orochimaru was an old acquaintance of the target, Pain also warned Orochimaru not to leak any information about the mission. This mission to assassinate Yusuke was naturally an important part of Danzo's, Uchiha clan annihilation plan. After getting in touch with Obito during the Nine-Tailed Fox incident more than 3 years ago, Danzo hadn't forgotten about this powerful collaborator. After receiving Danzo's, Uchiha clan annihilation plan, Obito immediately expressed his willingness to cooperate. However, the prerequisite for cooperation was that he would take away half of the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. After some consideration, Danzo accepted Obito's condition. Both Obito and Danzo were wary of Yusuke's strength. Obito decided to act as a middleman and use a commissioned mission to have Akatsuki deal with Yusuke. However, to ensure that they could kill him in one strike, Akatsuki needed to send out 2 official teams, and Danzo also had to pay a large sum of money. Thus, a net had been laid for Yusuke, and he was completely unaware of it. At this time, Yusuke was in the Hokage Tower, picking up a mission. Yusuke, this is a reconnaissance mission. Recently, a reconnaissance ninja reported that a mysterious organization has been discovered in Omegakure. This organization's members have been operating very close to our Land of Fire border. Since their strength is unknown, I want to find a capable Jonin to investigate. You're the best choice. The third Hokage looked at Yusuke. Yusuke nodded and accepted the mission. Understood. When does the mission start? Although Yusuke didn't show any change on his face, he was very suspicious in his heart. Could it be that Konoha has noticed Akatsuki ahead of time? Yusuke thought to himself. In the original story, Konoha didn't notice Akatsuki until a few years later. It was only after Itachi defected from Konoha village and joined Akatsuki that he gave the third Hokage some information about Akatsuki. At this time, Yusuke only thought that the third Hokage had obtained information about Akatsuki ahead of time for some reason and was going to investigate Akatsuki. He didn't expect that this would be a trap specifically aimed at him. The mission starts tomorrow. You can prepare well. Also, there will be a reconnaissance ninja accompanying you this time, the third Hokage said without changing his expression. At this time, a ninja who had been standing by, waiting for orders, stepped forward and introduced himself to Yusuke. The ninja introduced himself as Shin. He was a reconnaissance ninja, and it was he who had accidentally discovered the mysterious organization's activities. On this mission, this ninja named Shin would be Yusuke's assistant, cooperating with him to conduct a more in-depth investigation. After receiving the mission, Yusuke went back and made some simple preparations. The next morning, he met Shin at the village's exit and set off towards Omegakure. It was a few days' journey from Konoha village to the Land of Fire border. As they traveled, Yusuke asked Shin about the information for this mission. But as he learned more, Yusuke discovered that the information Shin was talking about didn't match the real situation of Akatsuki. Could there be another organization operating near Omegakure? Yusuke felt very strange, but he didn't mind too much. After all, the ninja world was so big. It was normal to have a few organizations that he didn't know about. A few days later, the two reached the border of the Land of Fire and prepared to infiltrate Omegakure. At this time, Shin, who was beside Yusuke, turned to him and smiled slightly. We'll reach Omegakure after passing through the forest ahead. We need to do some disguises. There was nothing wrong with Shin's smile, but Yusuke felt a very fake feeling. At this moment, Yusuke couldn't help but think of the smile of Sai, a member of Root, in the original story. Over the past few days, Yusuke had already noticed something was wrong with Shin. It wasn't that there was something wrong with him. It was that he was too perfect. During their conversation, Shin had almost no emotional fluctuations, which was expected of a normal person. He felt like a robot without emotions. Root organization. Yusuke's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but think of this possibility. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual reader 15 advanced chapters. Intermediate reader 30 advanced chapters. Expert reader 60 advanced chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 52. In the tea house, Itachi and Izumi were sitting together, sipping tea and chatting. Inari Shinko, Itachi's former teammate and now a tea house waitress, was also sitting with them. Shinobu-senpai, the tea house is so busy. You don't have to take care of us, Itachi said to Inari Shinko, who was sitting on the side. Inari Shinko nodded. As she was about to leave, she suddenly leaned her head close to Itachi's ear and playfully smiled. You little rascal, you're already at this age and you know how to date girls. And such a cute girl like Izumi-shin. Although Inari Shinko was whispering, her voice wasn't too low or too high. It was just loud enough for Izumi, who was sitting opposite Itachi, to hear. In an instant, both Itachi and Izumi blushed, while Inari Shinko walked away with a happy expression. Apparently, teasing her juniors occasionally was quite fun. Itachi and Izumi sat in awkward silence for a while. Itachi was the first to regain his composure and change the subject. By the way, have you noticed anything unusual about the clan lately? Izumi was taken aback. She regained her normal expression. What do you mean? Itachi nodded seriously. Yes. Although our clan is mainly responsible for the village's police work, there are still some clan members who are on missions outside. But recently, I've noticed that all the clan members who have been on missions outside haven't taken any more missions outside after returning to the clan. Besides that, I've noticed a lot of unfamiliar faces around the clan headquarters. These are all very dangerous signs. Izumi thought for a moment and smiled. You're wrong. My brother took a mission a few days ago. Hearing Izumi's words, Itachi's brow furrowed even tighter. Since Itachi had already become a Chunin, he had his own missions. He was also fully capable of training independently now. He only occasionally asked his teacher, Yusuke, for help when he encountered problems. Therefore, Itachi didn't often meet with Yusuke. Izumi glanced at the sky outside the tea house, which was gradually getting darker. She said expectantly, "It's getting late. Let's go to the night market later. It's been a long time since we went together." No. Itachi's expression suddenly changed, startling Izumi, who was sitting opposite him. Itachi immediately paid the bill and grabbed Izumi's hand, quickly rushing towards the Uchiha clan headquarters. "Hey, what's wrong, Itachi? Why are you suddenly so nervous?" Izumi asked curiously. Izumi had been a little shy and happy when Itachi had grabbed her hand, but seeing Itachi's serious and solemn expression, she realized that something big must have happened. Itachi said in a low voice, "I don't have time to explain. Let's go back to the clan first." Upon returning to the clan, Itachi immediately dragged Kabuto, who was still in the laboratory, out. He arranged for Izumi, Izumi's mother, Uchiha Izumi, Yuta, and the others to go to a secret location within the clan. After giving Kabuto a few brief instructions, Itachi immediately rushed home to bring his mother, Uchiha Makoto, and Sasuke to the location. After arranging for his family, Itachi immediately went to the police force to find his father, Uchiha Fugaku. I hope it's not too late. Itachi was very anxious. He felt that a huge conspiracy was hanging over the entire clan. But he was stopped by an unexpected person not long after he left. "Shisui, I'm very busy today. If you have anything to say, let's talk tomorrow." Itachi looked at Shisui, who had suddenly stopped him. Since his long conversation with Yusuke more than 3 years ago, Itachi's thinking had changed drastically from the original story. He naturally disagreed with Shisui's idea of sacrificing the clan to protect the village. Not long ago, Shisui had personally invited Itachi to join Root, but to Shisui's disappointment, Itachi had refused. Since then, the two, who had already been estranged, became even more distant. At the same time, Itachi had also put Shisui on the list of people he couldn't fully trust. This wasn't because Itachi had any personal objections to Shisui. It was because he had a keen sense that Shisui's position was completely different from his own. "Itachi, in the entire clan, I can see that you're the only one with the capacity to sacrifice the small for the greater good. Everyone else can't understand this, not even Yusuke-senpai. Although I don't know what changed you, I still want to make a final effort." Shisui looked at Itachi sincerely, his voice deep. From Shisui's words, Itachi guessed that he might know something. "What do you mean by final effort?" Itachi asked back. "I can't say more about the specifics. But I hope you can go with me to see the third Hokage and Danzo. This is your only chance." At this time, Shisui had already received orders from the third Hokage. He was going to cooperate with Danzo to destroy the Uchiha clan tonight, just like he had played Itachi's role in the original story. When he had first received this order, Shisui had been shocked. He wasn't someone who didn't care about his clan. It was just that in his heart, the village's position was far higher than that of the clan. Although Shisui had also objected, hoping to invite the clan leader, Uchiha Fugaku, to have a peaceful negotiation to resolve the current crisis, Danzo had refused, saying that it would alert them. Danzo then showed Shisui a lot of evidence to convince him that the radicals within the Uchiha clan were planning a coup. But what Shisui didn't know was that this evidence was half true and half false. Most of it was fabricated by Danzo. Because the radicals within the Uchiha clan had indeed had some ideas, exaggerating these existing facts made it difficult to tell the truth from the lies. Finally, the third Hokage appeared in person. He spoke eloquently to Shisui about the heroes of the past who had made great sacrifices for the village, including Shisui's ancestor, Uchiha Kagami, and others from his lineage. This became the final straw that tipped the scales in Shisui's heart, causing him to completely side with Konoha's high-ranking officials and accept the mission to destroy the Uchiha clan with his own hands. Shisui had completely given up on the other members of the Uchiha clan. But he still wanted to try one last time for his former best friend, Itachi. Although I ultimately failed to guide Itachi onto the right path, maybe it's not too late now, Shisui thought to himself. My only chance. Itachi looked at Shisui emotionlessly. His heart was also filled with mixed emotions. It could be said that if his teacher, Yusuke, hadn't existed, he would definitely have followed Shisui's footsteps and taken a completely different path. Scenes of his shared experiences with Shisui flashed through his mind. But these scenes were quickly replaced by more scenes. Scenes of eating dinner with his parents and chatting, scenes of teasing his baby brother, Sasuke, scenes of going to the night market with Izumi, scenes of training taijutsu with Kabuto, and scenes of having heart-to-heart conversations with his teacher, Yusuke. 3 years ago, Itachi's heart had lost its initial confusion. He only had determination and resolution. My teacher once said something. I don't know if you've heard it. What? Shisui frowned. He had a bad feeling from Itachi's tone. Those who walk different paths cannot walk together. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 2 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 53. After saying that, Itachi didn't bother with Shisui anymore. He immediately rushed towards the police force to find his father, Uchiha Fugaku. Itachi could sense that Konoha's conspiracy against his clan had begun to be executed, and Shisui was one of the participants. Looking at Itachi's departing figure, Shisui remained silent. He knew that after tonight, his only best friend, Itachi, would no longer exist. With a bang, Shisui vanished into a puff of white smoke. It turned out that he was just a shadow clone. In a valley on the border of a megacre, 4 people dressed in black cloaks with red clouds were hiding in the shadows, waiting for the appearance of their target, whom they were going to ambush and kill. Hey, why hasn't he arrived yet? Wasn't he supposed to be here today? Look, it's already dark, Hidan complained impatiently. Could something have gone wrong? Maybe the target discovered the trap and escaped ahead of time. Kakuzu, who was standing beside him, also frowned. This was a 150 million business deal. He didn't want anything unexpected to happen. At this time, Sasori, who was hidden inside Hiriko, seemed to sense something. He said slowly, "Quiet. Someone is approaching. It might be the target. But only one person is coming. Wasn't the inside man supposed to bring the target with him?" About 5 minutes later, a man dressed in a samurai's kimono slowly walked towards the inside of the valley. It was Yusuke. Since he was already in a megacre, it wasn't convenient to wear Konoha's ninja uniform. Therefore, Yusuke had changed into a black samurai kimono. Although Yusuke had discovered that Root was carrying out some kind of conspiracy against him or possibly his clan, he hadn't expected Konoha's high-ranking officials to plan to eliminate the Uchiha clan ahead of time. After all, in the original story, the Uchiha clan massacre wouldn't happen for another 2 or 3 years. And Itachi, who was tasked with destroying the Uchiha clan, was now standing on the side of the clan. Yusuke had used genjutsu to control the root ninja, Shin. From Shin, he learned that his mission was to bring Yusuke to a prearranged valley. He didn't know what the plan was after that. It was obvious that Shin was just a pawn for Root. Since he was already on the border of the Land of Fire, Yusuke couldn't return to the village in a short time. He decided to turn the tables and come to the designated location to see what kind of trap awaited him. As the person who will provide the follow-up information here, why is there no one here? Yusuke said to himself, looking around at the empty surroundings. At this time, a young man suddenly ran out. This man wasn't real. It was a human puppet controlled by Sasori. But Sasori's puppet-making skills were very exquisite. No one could tell that the man in front of them was a puppet just by looking at him. This human puppet pretended to be a ninja responsible for exchanging information with Yusuke. After confirming Yusuke's identity, the human puppet took out a scroll from his bosom and handed it to Yusuke. This scroll contains the latest information, the human puppet said. Yusuke nodded and took the scroll from the other party. But you said there would be 2 people investigating. Why are you the only one here? The human puppet asked Yusuke. The person the human puppet was asking about was naturally their inside man, Shin. Yusuke casually said as he opened the scroll, "You mean my assistant?" He was only responsible for bringing me here. As soon as the scroll was fully unfurled, the writing on it suddenly turned into a ceiling formation. Then, countless senbon, shining with a black light, shot out from the ceiling formation. It was obvious that these senbon were poisoned. Yusuke didn't panic when he saw this. He dodged and quickly threw the scroll away. But at that moment, the human puppet suddenly split open in the middle. 4 mechanical hands, connected to spring-loaded chains, shot out and grabbed Yusuke's limbs. What? Yusuke was startled. He had just jumped to the side to dodge the senbon attack from the scroll. Now, he was in midair and couldn't dodge again. The mechanical hands that grabbed Yusuke's limbs were immediately pulled back by the connected spring-loaded chains, and Yusuke was pulled into the split human puppet body. With a click, the split human puppet body closed again, and Yusuke was firmly trapped inside. Sasori, who was hiding in the shadows, smirked slightly, his face full of pride. At this time, Sasori was very sure that the target trapped in the human puppet's body wasn't a shadow clone. Now that the target had fallen for this trick, he was definitely dead. Humph, this Uchiha Yusuke was hyped up by Orochimaru, but he's nothing special, Sasori thought to himself, also despising Orochimaru. Sasori, hidden inside Hiriko, brought his hands together and shouted softly, "Ninjutsu, Iron Coffin Death." At this time, a series of sounds of a human body being pierced could be heard. Then, a large amount of blood flowed out from cracks in the human puppet's body, staining the nearby ground crimson. It turned out that there were many spikes hidden inside this human puppet body. Once the target was trapped inside the human puppet, Sasori could activate these spikes to pierce the target's body, directly killing them. The Akatsuki members looked at each other. Since blood had flowed out, it meant that the target was definitely dead. The target was a ninja with a bounty of 150 million. They were prepared for a big fight. But to their amusement, the target had been eliminated by Sasori's mere human puppet. Hey, what? It's over. Wasn't he known as the strongest member of the Uchiha clan? So the Uchiha clan of Konoha is that weak? Hidan, who was impatient, was the first to jump out. He stood beside the motionless human puppet and tapped its head with his hand. At this time, the other 3 Akatsuki members also appeared and came to Hidan's side. Kakuzu asked Sasori, who was next to him, "Won't your technique destroy the target's body beyond recognition? What if the employer doesn't accept it?" "Don't worry. I was originally going to turn the target into a human puppet, so I only used spike mechanisms in a few vital locations. But considering this guy's strength, he doesn't seem worth adding to my collection," Sasori said calmly. Kakuzu nodded reassuringly, "That's good. Then release the body. Once we've confirmed the identity, this mission will be officially completed." With a click, the human puppet's body split open again. A body with several bloody holes popped out and fell to the ground. These holes were in vital locations, such as the chest, throat, kidneys, and joints of the limbs. A normal person would have no chance of survival after suffering such fatal injuries. Kakuzu flipped the body over so that it was lying face up. The face of the body was exactly the same as Yusuke's. His eyes were wide open, and his expression was one of disbelief. Kakuzu said slowly, "Yes, it's definitely the target. I can't believe that 150 million was so easy to get." For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual reader 15 advanced chapters. Intermediate reader 30 advanced chapters. Expert reader 60 advanced chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNZT. Chapter 54. Konoha Village. It was late at night, and there were no pedestrians around the Uchiha clan headquarters, which was located on the outskirts of Konoha Village. However, when Itachi arrived at the police force, he couldn't find his father, Uchiha Fugaku. After asking Uchiha Suichiro, his father's assistant, he learned that Danzo had already been there before he arrived. Shisui had accompanied Danzo. I don't know what Danzo and the clan leader talked about in the office. They left together not long after. I don't know where they went, another Uchiha clan member beside Uchiha Suichiro said to Itachi. Since the Uchiha clan didn't have a good relationship with Danzo, almost all the Uchiha clan members addressed him directly by name, without using honorifics. Hearing this, Itachi decided to gather the clan members first and then go find his father. After all, Danzo had personally come here. It was very likely that the conspiracy against the clan had already begun to be executed. He had to make the clan members aware of the danger. Itachi sent the others in the police department away and spoke to Uchiha Suichiro alone. Danzo might be about to attack the clan. And the goal might be to destroy our entire Uchiha clan. Then, Itachi explained his observations and analysis to Suichiro. Uchiha Suichiro had always been Fugaku's confidant, and Itachi trusted him very much. He told Suichiro these speculations because Itachi needed a capable person to help him shoulder some of the burden at this time. Hearing Itachi's analysis, Suichiro felt a chill in his heart and was momentarily flustered. But seeing Itachi's calm demeanor, Suichiro suddenly felt like he had a backbone. "Itachi, do you have any solutions?" Suichiro asked expectantly. Itachi shook his head and said slowly, "To be honest, I don't have any solutions. After all, I don't know Danzo's specific plan yet. But we can gather the clan's strength first and have those who can't fight evacuate. I'll leave this to you. When you arrange the clan members, just do it in Father's name. I need to find Father. He can't be harmed at this critical juncture." After giving Suichiro his instructions, Itachi immediately used the Genjutsu Crow book to send out dozens of Genjutsu Crows to find his father, Uchiha Fugaku. "Yusuke-sensei, if you were here now, how great it would be." At this time, Itachi couldn't help but think of Yusuke. He sighed again. By a lake not far from the police force, Danzo, Shisui, and Fugaku were slowly strolling along. The bright moonlight shone on the lake. Beneath the seemingly peaceful and serene atmosphere, there was a fierce killing intent hidden. "Danzo-sama, I wonder what important matter brings you to the Uchiha clan?" Fugaku asked. When Danzo had come to visit today, he said he wanted to find a quiet place to talk to him. Fugaku had been very surprised. Fugaku had suspected that Danzo might want to negotiate a compromise with him, but he never dreamed that Danzo would want to destroy the entire Uchiha clan. Danzo said slowly, "This time, I'm here to talk to you about the future of the Uchiha clan." "Oh, what are your thoughts, Danzo-sama?" Fugaku looked at Danzo. At this time, Danzo also turned to look at Fugaku. Their eyes met. Fugaku felt that Danzo's eyes were full of killing intent. "For the future of the village, I think. The Uchiha clan no longer has a reason to exist." As soon as Danzo said this, Fugaku's first reaction was that he had misheard. But as Danzo finished speaking, 8 root ninjas rushed out from the forest by the lake, surrounding him. This formation shattered the last bit of hope in Fugaku's heart. He prepared himself for a desperate battle. However, what Fugaku was most worried about at this time wasn't his own safety, but the entire clan. It was obvious that Danzo was now going to attack the entire Uchiha clan. Fugaku turned to look at Shisui, who was still standing motionless behind Danzo. His eyes were full of anger and disbelief. He also felt a sense of disappointment and sadness in his chest. Shisui was one of Fugaku's most valued juniors in the clan, but at this moment of life or death for the clan, he was standing on the opposite side. Although Shisui had already shown his stance through his actions, Fugaku still didn't want to believe it. He asked Shisui in a low voice, "As a member of the Uchiha clan, tell me what your choice is." Facing Fugaku, Shisui felt guilty in his heart. But thinking about the irreconcilable conflict between the clan and the village, thinking about the future of Konoha, Shisui remained firm in his decision. Shisui said, "Clan leader, the clan and the village can no longer coexist. For the sake of the village's stability, to prevent a larger-scale internal conflict and casualties in the future, we need to cut the Gordian knot now." Hearing this, Fugaku roared, "Uchiha Shisui, don't forget what your last name is." Looking at Fugaku without fear, Shisui said in a deep voice, "I'm Uchiha Shisui, but I'm also Konoha's Shisui." At this time, Danzo raised his hand and waved. The 8 root ninjas immediately sprang into action. But they didn't surround Fugaku. Instead, they scattered and cast a barrier, surrounding Danzo, Shisui, and Fugaku. It was obvious that these root members weren't combat members. They were just a barrier team to trap Fugaku. The real battle would be fought between Danzo, Shisui, and Fugaku. Shisui slowly drew the short sword on his back, and the Sharingan pattern appeared in his eyes. Fugaku also activated his Sharingan, staring coldly at Shisui and Danzo. The battle was about to begin. During the Uchiha clan massacre in the original story, Fugaku had completely given up resisting. But that didn't mean that he wasn't Itachi's opponent at that time. A large part of this was because Itachi was his son, and Sasuke was also given a chance to survive. However, now that the person carrying out the massacre was Shisui, Fugaku wouldn't just sit back and wait for death. As Danzo, Shisui, and Fugaku were facing off, Root had already deployed all its members to eliminate the outposts around the Uchiha clan headquarters. At the same time, they cast a large-scale genjutsu barrier to completely seal off the Uchiha clan headquarters. This genjutsu barrier would confuse people's vision and hearing. Even if a large-scale battle took place inside the Uchiha clan headquarters, people far away wouldn't notice anything unusual. And to prevent ninjas within Konoha from discovering the barrier, Root had also blocked the roads between the village and the Uchiha clan headquarters ahead of time, prohibiting anyone in the village from approaching the Uchiha clan headquarters tonight. At this moment, the Uchiha clan headquarters was like a closed island. Konoha's high-ranking officials' plan to destroy the Uchiha clan had officially begun to be executed. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 4 comments 0 vote. NZNZT. Chapter 55. In a valley within a megacre, 4 members of Akatsuki, responsible for ambushing Yusuke, stood in a serious circle, seemingly discussing something extremely important. "Let's begin," Kakuzu said in a deep voice. All 4 of their eyes flashed with a gleam of light at the same time, and they raised their arms. The one Sasori raised was Hiriko's mechanical arm. Rock, paper, scissors. Looking at the 3 papers in front of him, and then at his clenched fist, Hidan complained, Hey, you guys are colluding, aren't you?" Sasori said calmly, "Don't be a chatterbox, carry the body." "What bad luck, I should have believed in the evil god instead of the god of gambling." No, evil god, I repent. Please forgive my offense." Hidan muttered with a face full of resentment. As Hidan carried Yusuke's body, the body's dangling arm happened to fall in front of Hiriko, who was half flying down. Through Hiriko, Sasori noticed the body's smooth palms. "No, this is a body, not the target." Sasori seemed to think of something and exclaimed. As soon as Sasori finished speaking, a cold voice rang out from above the valley. "Fire release. Great fire annihilation." A raging fire suddenly erupted from above the valley and shot downwards. The range of this fire was immense, far exceeding the Great Fireball technique. It completely covered the area where the 4 Akatsuki members were in the surrounding area. Seeing the overwhelming fire release jutsu in front of them, Kisame Hoshigaki, from Kurigakure, immediately used water release to resist. Water release. Great waterfall technique. Since this valley was in a megacre, there was plenty of water around. The sky was also raining continuously. The entire battle environment was very favorable for using water release jutsu. Under these conditions, the Great Waterfall technique that Kisame Hoshigaki, who was already proficient in water release, used was quite impressive. When the raging flames and the waterfall-like water release jutsu came into contact, a sizzling sound could be heard. This was the sound of a large amount of water being evaporated by the high temperature of the flames. Soon, the entire valley was filled with mist. Although Kisame Hoshigaki had temporarily resisted the overwhelming flames, the Akatsuki members discovered that the fire didn't seem to be diminishing under the impact of the Great Waterfall technique. Instead, the Great Waterfall was slowly becoming a small waterfall. Hey, your water release is really watery. It seems like it's not working at all." Seeing that Kisame Hoshigaki's water was being evaporated faster than he could release it, and that only a thin layer of water curtain was left in front of them, Hidan mocked him. But Kakuzu and Sasori had serious expressions. The enemy's fire release jutsu was unprecedentedly powerful. They knew that Kisame Hoshigaki's water release alone wouldn't be able to resist it. They immediately took action. Kakuzu's cloak suddenly inflated like a balloon. Then, 2 masked things, dragging a large number of gray-black tentacles, slid out from under the cloak. These gray-black tentacles were Kakuzu's secret technique, Earth Grudge Fear. Through Earth Grudge Fear, Kakuzu could steal the hearts of ninjas with different chakra attributes to form a kind of masked monster that could assist in battle. Each heart could shield Kakuzu from one fatal attack. At this time, the masked monsters that Kakuzu had split from his body were wearing a blue patterned mask and a gray patterned mask, representing water release and wind release. Sasori controlled Hiriko to raise both arms, and a tube extended from each arm, aiming at the flames that were about to press down from above. Water release, great waterfall technique. Scroll, water release, water flow stone. Large amounts of water were simultaneously sprayed from the mouths of the water release masked monster and the tube-like organs on Hiriko's arms, merging with Kisame Hoshigaki's great waterfall technique. Under the combined water release of the three Akatsuki members, the flames were finally suppressed. They began to slowly decrease until they were completely extinguished. Looking at the rising mist in front of him, Kakuzu frowned. There were 4 of them present, and the enemy who had suddenly attacked was still unknown. Under these circumstances, the mist would be very unfavorable to their side. Wind release, typhoon pass. The wind release masked monster opened its mouth, and a strong gust of wind blew all the mist in the entire valley away. The Akatsuki members' vision became clear again. As the mist dissipated, a leisurely footstep rang out in the valley. As expected of Sasori of the Red Sand, you were able to discover that the body was fake. At this time, the real Yusuke appeared in the valley and slowly walked towards the Akatsuki members. After Yusuke discovered that Shin, who was on the mission with him, was suspicious, he immediately used genjutsu to control him. Since Shin's information was limited, and Root also had some secret techniques to control its members, Yusuke only obtained some of the information that Anata Shin was supposed to provide him, such as the meeting place, time, and code words. But Yusuke was completely unable to obtain more information from Shin. Yusuke, who had decided to go to the enemy's ambush location to investigate, first used a secret technique he had learned from Orochimaru to modify Shin's face, making him look exactly like him. This secret technique completely changed the target's appearance. After it was completed, there would be no chakra fluctuations left. It was fundamentally different from transformation technique and was very difficult for others to detect. After giving Shin a makeover, Yusuke used genjutsu to control his body and come to the designated location. When he discovered that it was Akatsuki who was ambushing him, Yusuke was immediately startled. He guessed that Danzo and Obito must have teamed up. And this alliance probably meant that Danzo wasn't just targeting him, but the entire Uchiha clan. After all, in the original story, Obito had played a very important role in the Uchiha clan massacre. This discovery made Yusuke very worried. Although he had left a backup plan, the timing of its activation wasn't under his control. It had specific activation conditions. If something really happened, he couldn't return to the village immediately. Yusuke decided to deal with the Akatsuki members in front of him first. Although the official members of Akatsuki were all experts and they had a numerical advantage, Yusuke was no longer the same. Over the past 3 years, Yusuke's body had grown from adolescence to youth. His physical strength, stamina, and chakra had all improved significantly. Moreover, after training at the soul level, Yusuke could now skillfully use Reiatsu to fight. He had also reached a new level in his mastery of his Zanpakuto. This made Yusuke very confident in his own strength. Another very important point was that he knew the abilities of all the Akatsuki members in front of him, except for Kisame Hoshigaki, whom he didn't know much about. With his powerful strength and intelligence advantage, Yusuke was not afraid of the Akatsuki lineup in front of him. Seeing Yusuke appear, the Akatsuki members also became very wary. You are Uchiha Yusuke, as expected of a man with a bounty of 150 million. Kakuzu said to Yusuke in a deep voice. Yusuke's great fire annihilation had opened their eyes. They were now cautious in facing Yusuke. In such a humid environment, the fire release jutsu that Yusuke had used required the combined efforts of 3 of them to resist. Even they had never seen a ninja who could unleash fire release with such power. This made them believe 7 or 8/10 of what Orochimaru had said about Yusuke. This enemy is not on the same level as all the previous targets. The Akatsuki members thought to themselves. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 56. How did you discover that the body wasn't the target? Kakuzu asked Sasori, his eyes fixed on Yusuke who had appeared in the valley. The body's hands. What's wrong with the body's hands? Hidan asked curiously. The target's nickname is Flame Sword, and the information clearly states that he's skilled in swordsmanship. I've turned many samurai or ninjas who are good at swordsmanship into human puppets. These people who are good at swordsmanship have very obvious calluses on their hands that are different from ordinary people. I see, Hidan exclaimed, looking enlightened after hearing Sasori's explanation. Looking at Yusuke coldly, Sasori asked, I've never met you before. Who gave you my information? Sasori was very sure that he had never interacted with this ninja before. Moreover, he was always hidden inside his puppet, Hiriko, when he was on missions. The fact that the other party had called out his identity meant that someone had betrayed him. It goes without saying, it must be that bastard Orochimaru. A freak like him who likes to modify his body can't be trusted. Hidan shouted at this time. But as soon as he finished speaking, he noticed that both Kakuzu and Sasori were looking at him with murderous intent. He scratched his head curiously. With Hidan's intelligence, he didn't realize that his words were a bit too broad, including both Kakuzu and Sasori. Am I wrong? Only a freak would do those messed up things to their own body. And, alright, stop it. Kisame Hoshigaki kindly interrupted him before Hidan could finish. Sasori snorted coldly, ignoring Hidan. He looked at Yusuke and asked, did Orochimaru betray my information to you? If it were any other time, Yusuke might have been in the mood to chat with them and frame Orochimaru. But at this moment, Yusuke was determined to quickly finish them off. If something really happened to his clan, the backup plan he had left behind could be activated at any time, and he would be able to return to his clan at any time. You don't need to know any more. Yusuke's tone was calm. He had a simple, ancient katana in his hand. Looking at the katana in Yusuke's hand, which shone with a cold gleam under the moonlight, Sasori said coldly, I admit you have some strength, judging from that fire release jutsu, but... I'm going to chop this arrogant kid up. Before Sasori could finish, Hidan screamed, grabbed his signature weapon, triple-bladed scythe, and rushed towards Yusuke. Seeing Hidan, who was relying on his immortality to charge directly at him, Yusuke activated his Sharingan. Goldenrod Tomo appeared in his pupils. After all, Yusuke was facing 4 opponents. The Sharingan could not only provide him with powerful dynamic vision, but it could also cast some unique dojutsu. Seeing the Sharingan pattern in Yusuke's eyes, the Akatsuki members were slightly surprised. They had seen the Sharingan before, but this was the first time they had seen a Sharingan with such a strange pattern. They were also more wary of Yusuke. At this time, Hidan, who had been rushing towards Yusuke, suddenly stopped and stood motionless. No good, that idiot is under genjutsu, Kakuzu exclaimed. But when the Akatsuki members reacted, Hidan's headless body had already fallen to the ground with a thud. Yusuke was standing nearby, holding his katana in his right hand and Hidan's head in his left. Although Hidan's physique was very special, even if his head was cut off, he wouldn't die. But in this situation, Hidan had lost his ability to move. With his head held in Yusuke's hand, Hidan roared in fury, "Ah! You bastard! I'm going to kill you! Shame! The greatest shame of his life! To be beheaded and have his head held in someone's hand. This was something Hidan had never experienced before. Be careful, this enemy clearly has information about our abilities," Kakuzu shouted, reminding Sasori and Kisame Hoshigaki. Seeing Yusuke cut off Hidan's head, hold it in his hand, and not be surprised that Hidan could still curse even without his body, Kakuzu immediately judged that Yusuke had information about their abilities. As Kakuzu reminded the other Akatsuki members, another masked monster ran out from his cloak. The mask on this masked monster had purple patterns. It was the Lightning Release masked monster. Lightning Release, Fake Darkness. Wind Release, Pressure Harm. The Lightning Release masked monster and the Wind Release masked monster beside Kakuzu opened their mouths simultaneously. 3 thick lightning beams and a sharp wind blade attacked Yusuke from 2 directions. Yusuke easily dodged the lightning beams and wind blades with Shunshin no Jutsu. He appeared in front of the Wind Release masked monster, which was closest to him. He swung his katana. Yusuke's katana didn't hit the masked monster. It was blocked by Kisame Hoshigaki, who stepped forward and blocked it with his decapitation sword. But as soon as Kisame Hoshigaki blocked Yusuke's katana, he felt his arms sink. He couldn't control his feet and took 2 steps back. Impossible. How can his strength be so great? Kisame Hoshigaki thought in shock. But before he could think further, he saw Yusuke's eyes in front of him, filled with killing intent. Fuzen. As Yusuke's voice fell, a sound of metal grinding against metal, which made one's teeth ache, rang out. Kisame Hoshigaki's decapitation sword snapped in two. But Kisame Hoshigaki was pulled back as if someone had pulled him from behind. He quickly retreated, escaping the fate of being cut in two like his weapon. At this time, Kisame Hoshigaki was standing beside Sasori, sweating profusely. A spring-loaded steel cable was wrapped around his waist. It was obvious that Sasori had pulled him back in time. Yusuke's slashing power didn't come entirely from his physical strength. A large part of it came from his Reiatsu. Through the eruption of his Reiatsu, Yusuke's slashing power surpassed that of most swordsmanship masters in the ninja world. It also allowed him to easily cut Kisame Hoshigaki's decapitation sword with his Zanpakudo. In just a few seconds of fighting, Yusuke had incapacitated Hidan and almost killed Kisame Hoshigaki. This all-round suppression made the Akatsuki members, who had always been arrogant, feel psychologically uncomfortable. I didn't expect there to be such a master in the ninja world. I wonder who is stronger, him or the leader? Kisame Hoshigaki said in a deep voice. Sasori, who was standing beside him, also put away Hiriko and took out his trump card, the third case-cage human puppet. Kakuzu gathered his masked monsters around him to prevent Yusuke from defeating them one by one. Looking at the Akatsuki members who were on high alert, Yusuke smashed Hidan's teeth with the hilt of his katana and tied Hidan's head to his waist. Since he couldn't kill him, Yusuke decided to take Hidan's head back and deal with it later. Ignoring Hidan's incessant cursing, Yusuke held the flowing fire in his hand horizontally. Crimson flames slowly emerged from the blade. All things, in all forms, shall turn to ash. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 4 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 57. As Yusuke was engaged in battle with the Akatsuki members, a man wearing a red swirl mask appeared at the Uchiha clan headquarters in Konoha village. The newcomer was Obito. At this time, Obito wasn't wearing the Akatsuki cloak but a black robe. Under the bright moonlight, Obito stood on top of a tall building, overlooking the Uchiha clan headquarters. When this world falls into the infinite Tsukuyomi, families and villages will no longer matter. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and Obito decided to find Yusuke's family first. Although he knew that Akatsuki had sent 4 members to ambush Yusuke, Obito was still uneasy. Uchiha Yusuke, you really are a guy who makes people uneasy. Even if Akatsuki can't handle you, once I have your family as hostages, I believe you'll have to be cautious. A swirling ripple appeared in the air, and Obito's figure vanished into the center of the ripple. At this time, Root's attack on the Uchiha clan had begun. However, thanks to Uchiha Suichiro's timely arrangements and deployments in the clan leader's name, most of the combat forces had been assembled, and the elderly, women, and children had been evacuated to the clan's shelter beforehand. When the Uchiha clan ninjas heard that Root was planning to wipe out the entire clan, they were immediately enraged and vowed to completely destroy Root. Although Itachi suspected that Root's conspiracy against the clan was likely authorized by Konoha's high-ranking officials, after all, such an action was unlikely to be made by Danzo alone, he decided, after careful consideration, to temporarily tell Suichiro that Root was the mastermind behind the conspiracy. This would leave a way out for the clan, preventing them from becoming an enemy of the entire village. After the Root ninjas appeared, the Uchiha clan ninjas immediately launched a counterattack. The two sides engaged in a positional battle at the Uchiha clan headquarters, and for a while, neither side could gain the upper hand. In the original story, the Uchiha clan was completely unprepared for the extermination plan laid out by Konoha's high-ranking officials. Moreover, clan leader Fugaku had given up resisting, leading to their near-instantaneous destruction without any counterattack. Now, with Itachi's warning, the Uchiha clan had reacted in time. Although it was very hasty, it was enough to hold out for a while. Furthermore, Danzo hadn't anticipated that Obito wouldn't act according to the plan. Instead, he had played him for a fool. The original plan was for Obito to cooperate with Root to eliminate the Uchiha clan's fighting force. If Obito, with his top-tier combat strength, had intervened, even if the Uchiha clan organized a resistance, they wouldn't be able to hold out for long, and Root's losses would be minimal. However, Obito didn't care about Danzo or Root. At this time, he decided to capture Yusuke's family first. In a hidden underground tunnel at the Uchiha headquarters, the families of Yusuke and Itachi were hiding. Under the dim light, Sasuke was leaning against his mother, Uchiha Makoto, a little afraid. Uchiha Makoto gently patted Sasuke's back to comfort him while whispering something to Uchiha Izumi beside her. Yoda, who was oblivious to the seriousness of the situation, was aimlessly wandering around the small tunnel. On the other side, Kabuto sat calmly, as if lost in thought, while Izumi paced back and forth, her mind racing. Before entering the tunnel, they had heard about the general situation from Itachi, and their hearts were already filled with worry. The faint tremors that could be heard from outside the tunnel made everyone present even more uneasy. No, as a ninja of the Uchiha clan, I have to do my part at this time, Izumi said, and she walked towards the entrance of the tunnel. Kabuto stopped Izumi and said calmly, even if you go to the battlefield alone, you won't be able to do much. But if this place is discovered by the enemy, only you and I can protect everyone. Hearing Kabuto's words, Izumi calmed down. As Kabuto said, it wasn't just her in the tunnel. There were also her and Itachi's families. If the enemy attacked, Kabuto alone would have a hard time taking care of them. Thank you. I was impulsive. Izumi sighed and gave up the idea of going out to fight. Kabuto pushed up his glasses. Sensei isn't here. We have to hold our ground now. At this time, Yuta seemed to have discovered something. He walked towards a corner of the tunnel, squatted down, and looked carefully. What is this? Looking at the spherical object with red swirl patterns that was protruding from the ground, Yuta curiously poked it with his finger. Because the light in the tunnel was too dim, Yuta didn't realize at first that it was a human head. What surprised him even more was that his finger went straight through the spherical object without any obstruction. Just as Yuta was about to study this strange spherical object further, he suddenly saw a small hole on the spherical object flicker. Inside was a blood-red eye. The flicker was the eye blinking. Ah! Yuta screamed in fright and sat down on the ground. At this time, everyone in the tunnel was startled by Yoda's voice. Izumi and Kabuto quickly came to Yoda's side, just in time to see a person wearing a red swirl mask and a black robe emerge from the ground, as if he were completely intangible. I've found you. Obito's mask revealed a ferocious smile. Looking at the mysterious person in front of him, Kabuto felt a strong sense of unease. It was obvious that the other party was up to no good. But there was no one else to rely on here. Kabuto knew that he was the only one who could protect everyone. He pulled Yuta up and shielded him behind him. Kabuto looked calmly at Obito in front of him. Who are you? What are you doing here? Seeing Obito's appearance, Izumi, not to be outdone, took out her Kusanagi sword, Senbon Sakura, and stood beside Kabuto. Obito didn't answer Kabuto. Instead, he scanned everyone. Not bad. All the important people are here, Obito said slowly. At this time, Izumi noticed that the eye exposed by Obito's mask was also a Sharingan. She couldn't help but ask, are you also from the Uchiha clan? Obito sneered, yes, I'm a ghost of the Uchiha clan. And tonight, the Uchiha clan will be destroyed. You will all die here. When he said this, Obito paused and looked at Izumi, who was on high alert. The corner of his mouth, beneath the swirl mask, curled up slightly. Maybe you don't have to die today. Hearing the words of this masked mysterious person, Kabuto and Izumi knew that there was no escape from this battle. They exchanged glances and immediately decided on a plan of action. In recent years, Izumi, Kabuto, and Itachi had fought together in many battles and completed many missions. They were now very tacit. A single look was enough to convey their thoughts to each other. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 58. Interesting. Still trying to struggle. Seeing Kabuto and Izumi seemingly preparing to resist, Obito said calmly. Seeing Obito seemingly unguarded, Kabuto quickly formed hand seals and released an Earth Release Jutsu. Earth Release. Earth Spike Jutsu. Suddenly, a large number of cone-shaped earth spikes shot out from under Obito's feet, piercing him. At the same time, Izumi, who was supposed to be standing beside Kabuto, suddenly appeared behind Obito and slashed towards his neck. "We got him." At that moment, Kabuto and Izumi couldn't help but feel overjoyed. They hadn't expected that this strangely dressed, imposing enemy would be defeated so easily. But the next moment, they noticed something was wrong. Their attacks had hit the enemy, but they didn't feel like they had hit anything solid. The enemy was still standing in front of them unharmed. Such a simple and practical tactic. One person uses ninjutsu to distract the enemy, while the other leaves a shadow clone behind and secretly launches a fatal attack from behind. If it were an ordinary person, they might have fallen for it. "Unfortunately, your opponent is me." Obito didn't counterattack. Instead, he said in a confident tone. Izumi stepped forward and swung her sword at Obito several times, but without exception, each strike passed through his body without causing any damage. "Impossible. Is this genjutsu?" Izumi retreated to Kabuto's side after several attacks failed. Kabuto shook his head. "No, it must be a space-time ninjutsu. This jutsu allows him to become intangible, just like how he suddenly appeared in this sealed tunnel." With a powerful sense of pressure, Obito slowly walked towards them step by step. Excellent observation skills. "So, how are you going to deal with this?" Wind Release. Vacuum Wave. Kabuto formed hand seals and spat out several air waves with extremely high penetrating power. But as he expected, all the attacks passed through the other party's body. At this time, Obito's movements suddenly became faster. He instantly appeared behind Kabuto and grabbed him with one hand. Seeing this, Kabuto immediately raised his hand to block. He didn't know that if Obito touched him, he would be pulled into the Kamui dimension. The moment his hand touched Kabuto's arm, Obito suddenly returned to his intangible state. The reason was that Izumi's katana had just slashed from behind Obito, forcing him to abandon his physical form and pull Kabuto into the Kamui dimension. As Obito passed through Kabuto's body in an intangible state, he suddenly turned his head. His crimson Sharingan was filled with killing intent. Kabuto also turned his head at the same time to observe Obito's movements. He saw a swirling spatial distortion suddenly appear in front of the eye exposed by Obito's mask. "Oh no," Kabuto thought to himself. Suddenly, 5 or 6 shuriken flew out from the swirling spatial distortion, flying straight towards Kabuto's face. It turned out that Obito had used his Kamui ability to directly shoot shuriken from the Kamui dimension through his Sharingan. Facing such a close-range attack at such a tricky angle, Kabuto was unable to dodge. Clang, 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 several sounds rang out, accompanied by several flashes of sword light. The shuriken were all knocked down. It turned out that Izumi had provided timely support. Wood Release. Sharp Spike Technique. Kabuto, who hadn't had time to breathe a sigh of relief, saw that Obito suddenly extended a wooden spike from his right palm, stabbing towards Izumi, who was beside him. Kabuto was shocked. He immediately pushed Izumi away, sacrificing himself. He was pierced in the abdomen by the wooden spike in Obito's palm. Oh, what a touching camaraderie, but, seeing Kabuto blocking the attack for Izumi, Obito couldn't help but sneer. This move isn't so simple. As Obito finished speaking, several sharp wooden spikes suddenly burst out from Kabuto's body. In an instant, Kabuto was covered in blood. Originally, even if Obito's sharp spike technique had hit Izumi, he wouldn't have launched a second attack with the wooden spikes. After all, he planned to capture Izumi alive. Before confirming Yusuke's death, Izumi would be a backup hostage. But since the target was Kabuto, Obito wouldn't show any mercy. At this time, Kabuto's eyes widened, and he covered his abdomen with his right hand. His body uncontrollably knelt on the ground, then fell to the ground with a thud. Kabuto. At this time, everyone around them exclaimed. Uchiha Izumi and Yoda immediately rushed to Kabuto's side and hugged him, crying. Because Yoda was extremely sad and crying loudly, a heavy downpour suddenly began in Konoha village. However, no one in the tunnel noticed. The sharp spike technique, a piercing attack launched from within the body, could damage the body's organs from the inside. It was extremely fatal to normal humans. At this time, Kabuto was no longer breathing. Looking at Kabuto, whose body was pierced by wooden spikes, Izumi was stunned. 2 lines of tears flowed down her cheeks. Scenes of her time with Kabuto flashed before her eyes. "Hello, I'm Yakushi Kabuto. Pleased to meet you. Izumi, here, have some of these dumplings. Izumi, you should use this jutsu like this. Come on, form the hand seals with me." "Oh, Izumi, I'm not your opponent in taijutsu anymore." Since Kabuto had been brought home by Yusuke more than 3 years ago, Izumi felt like she had gained another brother. This brother wasn't as admired by her as Yusuke, and he wasn't related to her by blood. But whether it was eating, training, playing, or going on missions, this brother was always by her side, giving her help and care. Suddenly, blood mixed with her clear tears. The pattern in Izumi's Sharingan pupils suddenly changed. The 3 tomo slowly disappeared, forming a pattern of 5 petals surrounding a pistil, like a cherry blossom. At this moment, Izumi had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. The condition for Uchiha clan members to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan was the death of a close relative or loved one. Ultimately, it was an intense mental stimulus that broke through a certain limit, triggering the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Seeing Kabuto pierced by wooden spikes and lifeless, Izumi, who had long considered Kabuto as a brother, also broke through that limit because of the mental stimulus. "I'm going to kill you," Izumi said coldly, looking at Obito in front of her. She sheathed her Senbon Sakura and took a starting position for a swordsmanship technique. "Ha ha ha, let me see your power." As expected of Uchiha Yusuke's sister. "I didn't expect you to give me such a surprise." When Obito saw that Izumi had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, he was initially startled. But soon, he was overjoyed. After all, a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan was invaluable. At this time, in Obito's eyes, Izumi's Mangekyo Sharingan was already within his grasp. With his body in an intangible state, Obito walked towards Izumi step by step. He was now enjoying the feeling of toying with his enemies. Seeing Izumi, who had already appeared in front of him with her hand on the hilt of her sword, using Shunshin no Jutsu, Obito couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, as if he sensed danger. Although he was very confident in his intangible state, Obito still instinctively dodged to the side. A pink, dazzling blade light, like a blooming cherry blossom, flashed past his eye. Obito felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, and a familiar arm, accompanied by a spray of blood, floated in the air. "Is this my arm?" For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/kane45. Casual reader 15 advanced chapters. Intermediate reader 30 advanced chapters. Expert reader 60 advanced chapters. 5 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 59. Impossible. Obito exclaimed in disbelief, simultaneously grabbing his severed right arm with his left hand and quickly flashing away, creating some distance between himself and Izumi. The wound where Obito's arm had been severed at the shoulder was filled with more pure white muscle tissue than blood, making it look quite eerie. Izumi's initial target with her slash had been Obito's head. However, Obito's premonition of danger allowed him to escape, but he was still too slow to dodge completely and lost an arm to Izumi's strike. "This is your Mangekyo Sharingan ability, right? I didn't feel any spatial fluctuations. Why could your sword hit me?" Obito asked in a gloomy tone, looking at the girl in front of him with a cold expression. His intangibility ability involved hiding his body within the Kamui dimension. To injure him, one had to extend their attack into the Kamui dimension and hit his real body. But Izumi's slash just now didn't have any spatial fluctuations, and her katana didn't cross space to hit his real body. This made Obito very confused. In fact, the ability that Izumi awakened with her Mangekyo Sharingan was called Eye-Sighted Slash. As the name suggests, when Izumi's Mangekyo Sharingan sees a target being struck, the damage is directly reflected onto the real body. This ability could counter enemy abilities like intangibility, elementalization, and genjutsu. These types of enemies were very troublesome for ordinary taijutsu-based ninjas or ninjas who relied on weapons to fight, but they were no longer a problem for Izumi. However, Izumi wouldn't explain her Mangekyo Sharingan ability to Obito. Instead, she once again took a stance for drawing her sword, her eyes filled with killing intent as she stared at Obito. The swordsmanship technique Izumi used was a move adapted from Ryujin Jaka's Fuzen by Yusuke. It replaced the reliance on Reiatsu with chakra and her own strength to power the swordsmanship technique. Although the Fuzen powered by chakra was far less powerful than the one powered by Reiatsu, it still surpassed most of the known swordsmanship techniques. Seems like you're in trouble. At this time, Izumi heard a strange but lively voice. The voice came from the mask of the mysterious enemy in front of her, but both the voice and tone were clearly different from the person who had spoken before. The owner of this voice was Zetsu, White Zetsu. He was still parasitically attached to Obito's body. Although it was a parasitic relationship, Zetsu's existence was completely harmless to Obito. Not only did he complete the missing body tissue that Obito had lost after being severely injured, but he also greatly enhanced Obito's vitality and physical abilities, granting Obito the Kekkei Genkai of wood release. This girl's taijutsu is very powerful, and she has a special ability that allows her to ignore the Kamui dimension and injure me. She's indeed difficult to deal with, Obito said in a serious tone. Then let me take control of your body. If I help you deal with her, you'll tell me what poop feels like. Zetsu said. At this time, Izumi had already activated Fuzen. She instantly appeared beside Obito, and her katana slashed out another wave of cherry pink blade light. But Obito's movement speed suddenly increased significantly. He dodged Izumi's slash in time. Seeing this, Izumi quickly closed in and used the Uchiha-style swordsmanship, relentlessly pursuing Obito. The cherry pink blade light flickered continuously in the dim tunnel. Obito used various strange postures to dodge Izumi's attacks, seemingly at ease. At this time, a circle of white, tentacle-like substances extended from the collar of Obito's black robe. These tentacles swirled around Obito's head, completely covering his head and mask, forming a white, swirling head covering. In this state, Obito's body was completely under the control of Zetsu, White Zetsu. His overall abilities had greatly improved. Zetsu reattached the right arm that Izumi had cut off to the shoulder socket. A mass of white tissue surged from the shoulder socket and connected with the severed arm. Zetsu's right arm immediately returned to its original state. Little girl, I'm sorry, but my master told me to kill you directly. Don't blame me. Zetsu easily dodged another slash from Izumi and said nonchalantly. He had received instructions from Obito to directly kill Izumi. Obito was very wary of Izumi's abilities. After all, Yusuke's mother was still there. Even if Izumi died, he would still have a bargaining chip. Wood release. Hell's Dance. At this time, Zetsu seized an opportunity during Izumi's attack, formed hand seals, and completed a wood release jutsu. Several thick, thorny tree roots suddenly rose from the ground, constantly circling and approaching Izumi. Wood release. Hell's Dance was originally a large-scale, destructive jutsu. But to keep a hostage, Zetsu controlled the scale of this jutsu, targeting only the area where Izumi was. Facing the thorny tree roots that were constantly growing and approaching, Izumi continuously dodged with her agile movements. However, she didn't notice that Zetsu's body had also merged with the wood release tree roots. Looking at Izumi, who was still waving her katana to block the tree roots while facing away from him, Zetsu's body suddenly emerged from the tree roots behind Izumi. A sharp wooden spike in his palm suddenly stabbed towards Izumi's back. No. Seeing the mysterious masked person suddenly launching a fatal attack from behind Izumi, Uchiha Izumi and the others, who couldn't fight and could only watch, exclaimed. Hearing everyone's exclamations and seeing the fear in their eyes, Izumi quickly turned her head. She saw Zetsu, who was right in front of her, and the sharp wooden spike in his hand, which was almost touching her. At this critical moment, a golden-red three-tomo Sharingan pattern suddenly appeared in Izumi's right eye. It was exactly the same as the Sharingan pattern in Yusuke's eyes. As the pattern appeared, a burst of golden-red flames erupted from Izumi's right eye and surrounded her, protecting her. The sudden flames were extremely hot. They instantly burned all the tree roots summoned by Zetsu's wood release to ashes. They also directly burned off Zetsu's right arm, which was holding the wooden spike, and quickly spread towards his body. Fortunately, Zetsu reacted quickly and used a wood release body replacement technique in time to escape, but the right side of his body had been burned to a large extent. The body tissue exposed through the torn clothes had turned completely black. Zetsu, still shaken, suddenly felt a wave of killing intent coming from his soul. Under the influence of this killing intent, he found it difficult to even speak. Looking ahead, Zetsu saw a pair of golden-red Tomo Sharingan staring coldly at him from within the flames in front of Izumi. At this moment, Zetsu felt as if he had been targeted by death. He completely lost the desire to continue fighting, and the only emotion left was fear. Izumi, I'm sorry I'm late. As Yusuke's voice rang out, a tall figure slowly walked out from the raging flames. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 0 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 60. Yusuke's sudden appearance was due to a backup plan he had set in motion. It turned out that ever since he successfully awakened his Sharingan more than 3 years ago, Yusuke had gained an ability he had never revealed to anyone before, Kagero. Kagero allowed Yusuke to use his Sharingan to draw upon the power of Ryujin Jaka, directly igniting the target in front of him. It was almost identical in activation to Itachi's Amaterasu, except for the nature and color of the flames, which were completely different from Amaterasu. This ability of Yusuke's Sharingan didn't come from the Mangekyo Sharingan. It was a product of the Sharingan being influenced by Ryujin Jaka in Yusuke's spiritual world. It was also the reason why Yusuke's Sharingan looked different from other Uchiha clan members. After gaining this ability, Yusuke immediately took the opportunity to leave a conditional dojutsu in his sister Izumi's and mother Uchiha Izumi's eyes. This dojutsu was very similar to the one Itachi left in Sasuke's eyes before he died. However, the ability Itachi left behind was to activate Amaterasu and kill the other party as soon as Sasuke saw Obito. At that time, Itachi thought it was Madara. The dojutsu that Yusuke left behind, however, was to activate Kagero and protect the host as soon as they were about to suffer a fatal injury, burning away any threats around them. However, this didn't necessarily completely eliminate the threat to the host. What made Yusuke most excited about Kagero was that when this ability was activated, it drew upon the flames of Ryujin Jaka. In other words, the flames of Kagero were connected to Ryujin Jaka at the moment of activation. This meant that when Kagero was activated, Yusuke could use his fire release, flame walk technique, and directly use the connection between the flames and Ryujin Jaka to cross space and appear beside the host. It was a pity that the number of times this dojutsu could be activated simultaneously depended on the number of Sharingan. Yusuke, who only had 2 eyes, could only use this dojutsu on his sister and mother. Otherwise, Yusuke really wished he could leave a dojutsu like this for his disciples, Kabuto and Itachi. Yusuke, brother. Seeing Yusuke suddenly appear, everyone exclaimed. From Izumi almost being fatally attacked, the flames suddenly appearing to protect Izumi, and then Yusuke emerging from the flames, the entire process happened so quickly that everyone was caught off guard. But after everyone exclaimed, they were immediately filled with joy. At this moment of great crisis for the entire clan, Yusuke's appearance was like a shot of adrenaline for everyone. They had found a pillar to lean on. Yusuke swung his katana, drawing all the surrounding flames into Ryujin Jaka to prevent them from accidentally injuring his own people. Brother, Kabuto, he. At this time, Izumi looked at Yusuke's tall figure, her heart relaxed. The pressure of protecting everyone on her shoulders disappeared. But then, she thought of Kabuto's sacrifice and couldn't help but cry to Yusuke. Hearing this, Yusuke was shocked. He immediately looked at Kabuto, who was being held in his mother, Uchiha Izumi's, arms, silent and lifeless. After careful observation, Yusuke discovered that although Kabuto seemed lifeless at this time, and the wooden spikes protruding from his body looked frightening, Yusuke, with his powerful soul power, could sense that Kabuto wasn't dead. He was in a state of self-repair, pretending to be dead. During his training with Tsunade, Kabuto had also learned about the ability of Tsunade's Yin Seal technique. Although Kabuto wasn't Tsunade's disciple, and Tsunade didn't teach him the Yin Seal technique, Kabuto, who was quick to learn, had still developed 2 medical ninjutsu for himself, Yin Healing Restoration Technique, and Physical Energy Healing. In the original story, Kabuto developed these 2 ninjutsu, largely based on the research of Karen, who had the Uzumaki clan's constitution. Now, although Kabuto didn't have the opportunity to study Karen, he could still learn more medical ninjutsu knowledge from Tsunade. Therefore, Kabuto had successfully developed these 2 medical ninjutsu, and their effects were even better than those in the original story. At this time, Yusuke also discovered that there was a life form inside Kabuto that didn't belong to him. He actually has this trick up his sleeve. This kid really is a genius. It turned out that after being hit by Obito's sharp spike technique, Kabuto's hand covering his abdomen wasn't to cover the wound. He was secretly performing a summoning technique, summoning dozens of small slugs to help him repair his body. But although Kabuto was using various methods to treat himself, he had been hit by the sharp spike technique, a ninjutsu with extremely destructive power towards living organisms. At this moment, his life was hanging by a thread. Hey, you bastard, where did you bring me? What about my body? Suddenly, a grumpy man's voice rang out in the tunnel. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. It was a head tied to Yusuke's waist. What was shocking, or rather, terrifying, was that the head was actually yelling. At this time, both Zetsu and Obito immediately recognized the head tied to Yusuke's waist as Hidan, the new member of Akatsuki. Did he single-handedly take down the 4 members who were ambushing him? And how did he manage to directly return here from a Megakure? With a strong sense of doubt and fear, Obito decisively decided to abandon his participation in the Uchiha clan extermination operation tonight. Not to mention Yusuke, who was incredibly powerful, there was now also Izumi, who could injure him even through the Kamui dimension. If he wasn't careful, he would die here. As for Danzo and Root, what did they have to do with him, Obito? Obito was a man of action. Once he decided that something was impossible, he wouldn't hesitate to run away. He immediately regained control of his body from Zetsu, White Zetsu, and without a word, he used Kamui to disappear into the wall beside the tunnel. Obito's escape was so fast that Yusuke was caught off guard. Although he didn't want to let Obito go, Yusuke couldn't really stop Obito, who had the Kamui ability and was determined to escape. More importantly, Kabuto was still in critical condition. It was more important to treat him first. Don't worry, everyone, Kabuto isn't dead. Yusuke used the hilt of his katana to knock the noisy Hidan unconscious. He walked over to Kabuto's side, surrounded by everyone's surprised, fearful, curious, and strange gazes. The reason for these complex gazes was naturally the head of Hidan on Yusuke's waist. Although everyone wanted to ask for an explanation, they temporarily suppressed their curiosity because Yusuke needed to check Kabuto's injuries first. Yusuke briefly explained Kabuto's condition to everyone, reassuring them. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters. 2 comments 0 vote. NZNT. Chapter 61. Looking at Kabuto, who was in a state of suspended animation, Yusuke ignited a small flame on his fingertip. His first priority was to deal with the wooden spikes that were piercing Kabuto's body. He touched the wooden spikes protruding from Kabuto's body with his finger, and a soft, whoosh, sound, like flames flickering, immediately rang out. The small flame on his fingertip instantly burned all the wooden spikes connected to Kabuto's body to ashes, without harming Kabuto's body at all. In fact, if those wooden spikes hadn't been left inside Kabuto's body, Kabuto's healing ability would have been enough to heal his body. However, these wooden spikes hindered Kabuto's ability to use chakra to repair and restore damaged tissue, causing him to expend a large amount of chakra, only able to sustain his life. He had no chance of recovering on his own. This also illustrated the terrifying power of the sharp spike technique from the side. After dealing with the wooden spikes inside Kabuto's body, Yusuke took out a Hashirama cell fusion liquid he had exchanged with Orochimaru and injected it into Kabuto's shoulder. Just like when he had saved the 4th Hokage and his wife, Yusuke used the life-saving technique, Mark of Life, to replenish Kabuto's life force. As soon as the Mark of Life was completed, Kabuto coughed lightly and slowly opened his eyes. "Teacher, I'm sorry, I couldn't defeat the enemy, and I fell first," Kabuto said weakly, looking at Yusuke. Yusuke shook his head. "No, you did a great job. It was my lack of vigilance. I fell for a feint, giving that old geezer Danzo a chance." Hearing Yusuke's words, Izumi, who was standing nearby, looked at him with a puzzled expression and asked, "Brother, how did you suddenly appear here? And what about this head?" Time went back about 10 minutes. At that time, Yusuke was still fighting Sasori, Kakuzu, and Kisame Hoshigaki in the valley in a Megakure. To quickly finish the battle, Yusuke directly released Ryujinjaka. For a moment, the entire valley became humid and hot due to the influence of Ryujinjaka's flames. Seeing Yusuke, surrounded by flames with an imposing aura, Sasori, Kakuzu, and Kisame Hoshigaki exchanged glances and decided to strike first. Kakuzu formed hand seals, and the wind release and water release masked monsters beside him opened their mouths simultaneously, combining to unleash a composite jutsu. Wind release, water release, wind-water wave dance. Countless sharp wind blades mixed with water bullets with extremely high penetrating power densely covered the area where Yusuke was. Facing Kakuzu's composite jutsu, Yusuke swung Ryujinjaka forward. This slash didn't have any flames attached to it. It simply used Reiatsu to split the dense, wind-water wave dance, in front of him in half, leaving behind a large number of traces of water bullet impacts and wind blade cuts on the ground on both sides of Yusuke. At this time, Sasori's third case-cage human puppet had already flown above Yusuke, preparing to launch an attack from above. Magnetic release, sand iron barrier. Kagero. As the third case-cage human puppet unleashed the sand iron barrier, Yusuke's dojutsu, Kagero, was also activated at the same time. The third case-cage human puppet, whose entire body was engulfed in golden red flames, spewed out a large amount of black sand iron from its mouth, quickly forming a sand iron barrier. The sharp spikes made of black sand iron instantly filled the area where Yusuke was. What? Sasori's expression changed drastically. He hadn't noticed how the enemy's flames had attacked his third case-cage human puppet. If it had been a normal attack with a visible trajectory, Sasori could have controlled the puppet to dodge using his superb puppet-making skills. But Yusuke's attack, which directly ignited the target after visually locking onto it with his dojutsu, was very difficult for Sasori to react to. Realizing that the third case-cage human puppet was beyond saving, Sasori decided to increase the chakra output, maximizing the power of the sand iron barrier. It was also the third case-cage human puppet's final act. The already dense sand iron spikes immediately extended more branches, instantly filling the entire valley, leaving only a few gaps in the area where the Akatsuki members were. Humph, although I lost my most precious third case-cage human puppet, it's worth it to be able to kill an enemy like this, Sasori thought to himself. Kakuzu, use lightning release. Although Sasori considered this full-coverage sand iron barrier to be foolproof, he still reminded Kakuzu to continue attacking to ensure that the enemy was completely eliminated. Hearing Sasori's voice, Kakuzu immediately understood what he meant. Sand iron contained a lot of iron, so it was conductive. At this time, using lightning release would maximize its power. But before Kakuzu could complete his lightning release, the Akatsuki members saw a small spark of fire ignite in the center of the black sand iron barrier. From that spark of fire, the flames instantly spread to the entire sand iron barrier. The black sand iron spikes that had been crisscrossing the valley were all ignited by golden red flames. In just a few seconds, the sand iron barrier that had covered the entire valley melted away, completely broken. Impossible. How can his fire release jutsu be so hot? Sasori was shocked. Kakuzu and Kisame Hoshigaki were also stunned by the sight. However, before they could take any further action, Kisame Hoshigaki suddenly screamed in pain, and half of his body was suddenly engulfed in flames. He's using dojutsu to activate the flames. At this time, Sasori finally noticed how Yusuke activated his flame attacks. It was by visually locking onto the target with his dojutsu. Although this visual attack method was very strange and difficult to dodge, it wasn't completely impossible to deal with once a skilled ninja noticed it. For example, in the original story, Itachi's Amaterasu had a slight delay after visually locking onto a target before the flames ignited. If the target locked onto by the Sharingan's gaze was agile enough, they could dodge the flames by moving quickly. Yusuke's Kagero could also be dodged in this way. Although Sasori had figured out how Yusuke activated Kagero, the next scene that appeared even more surprised him and Kakuzu. Yusuke's upper body suddenly emerged from the flames burning on Kisame Hoshigaki's shoulder. Feeling a sharp killing intent coming from behind his shoulder, Kisame Hoshigaki hurriedly turned his head. He saw a pair of golden red Sharingan looking at him indifferently. A crimson blade light flashed, and a burning head flew through the air. Amazing! The head exclaimed in the air, and those were the last words Kisame Hoshigaki spoke in his life. After dealing with Kisame Hoshigaki, Yusuke didn't hesitate for a moment before attacking Sasori. Kakuzu's Earth Grudge Fear ability, when equipped with 4 chakra hearts of different attributes, could shield him from 4 fatal attacks. Therefore, it would be easier to deal with Sasori first. For more advanced chapters visit my Patreon. patreon.com/Kane45. Casual Reader 15 Advanced Chapters. Intermediate Reader 30 Advanced Chapters. Expert Reader 60 Advanced Chapters.